All right. Welcome back to the channel. Ladies and gentlemen, I got this interesting reaction. I found the conversation much more, I guess it gets into concepts, ideologies, um, hypothetical visions of what the future should entail. I found this conversation in particular valuable because it can articulate a section of the center political and potentially politically right that have a different perspective on how society should be. When I try to do these, I do think everything should have value, and the value of entertaining the conversation of like the technocrat vision and how certain people do appeal to that is important. So this is the conversation that had here. I'll find it amazing to speak with counterpoints in the future regarding this because I think that conversation will be very interesting. All right. I watched a good amount of it, but I wanted to save some of this for a stream. So
I chat for the past 2 to 3 weeks in order to describe the legal analysis of ICE shootings and military intervention because I said, oh yeah, we both agree that Trump is an existential shitty threat to the Republic of the United States, and I care about the Republic of the United States. So they're like, oh, you're just a liberal because every Republican has forgotten that we care about a republic. But they didn't realize.
I don't think that you're a Republican in the more traditional sense, though, because I think that you advocate
traditional though.
I'm being sold something. I feel like that
19th, early 20th century. What they were doing is they were saying, take this tonic. It will generate you. It will give you life. It's this elixir that will make you amazing. Actually, it should be harnessed by the state for the next series of technological developments.
Yeah, to me, it's just like, I don't really need these fucking loser nerds who don't know shit and who are cavorting with the worst of all humanity because of some like ultralord lore. It just seems that we don't need these egomaniacal,
also the NBA All-Star game,
fucking Mark Andreessen types to be involved in the coalition, to coin a phrase. And I don't know why you feel they're so essential.
Well, hey, man, if you want to find me like nicer, softer, sweeter military industrial complex people. But the truth is that we are a $70 trillion international commercial empire that requires technological innovation. And so these people are ushering in the next generation of technology that aids in the maintenance of that $70 trillion commercial empire. And so pacifism or anti-militarism would lead to the collapse of the United States as it presently exists, with horrible economic and social outcomes. So they're a useful and necessary evil.
Can I sort of map that on to a typical conservative refrain, which I don't know if you share, to be honest. I'm kind of just shooting in the dark here, which is very skeptical of higher education, very skeptical of H-1B visas. It seems that we are contradictory. We are not 100% sold on education for the masses or the importation, to coin another phrase, of high-skilled labor in certain contexts. And instead, we put our eggs in the basket of people who I think have not the best interest of humanity at heart. So yeah, talk me on to your view. Do you reconcile this view of, skepticism at elites, skepticism at universities, skepticism at H-1B visas with your technocratic focus on leadership, or do you reject that more?
So, from my understanding, the reason why Pisco is eliciting this question is to see if he falls in line with these people on. I don't even know what part of the right they would be necessarily, but it's the idea that the system is, I guess you could say, far right. The system is failing us in so many areas, and we need to fix it. We need to fix it from the top, from the bottom to top to bottom, however you want to phrase it, where people say that education is bastardized from the left and the elites are being controlled by the left. He's trying to map if Counterpoint also agrees with the sentiment and trying to distill the side Counterpoint actually is on. I for the most part, from everything I've heard from Counterpoint, I think this guy has a good head on his shoulder. Obviously, he's smart. I think he makes some good points. And I don't think it's just purely anti-Trump. So let's continue.
Or traditional, I don't know if I want to call it traditional, this more populist sentiment of anti-Harvard, etc.
Yeah, I think this is the difference between neoconservatives such as myself, who are effectively like liberal hawks, right, and the populist populist left-wing economic right, which Donald Trump has popularized, the working class right, so to speak. So I don't trust the layperson. And if you actually look at the historical roots of both the Republican and Democratic Party, the Democratic Party has always believed that there is like wisdom in the demos. They always believed that the popular will should be carried out. It's just that prior to 1965, the popular will was in the South with the working class of the South who were racist and segregationist. Whereas after 1965, I would say basically after the Civil Rights Movement, the Democrats with the famous like party flip or whatever, the party flip kind of came with the Democrats wanted to integrate more diverse coalition into their voting populace. And so they started appealing to Hispanics and blacks and gay folk. And they viewed the civil rights fight as a way to expand their coalition. And so whereas with the Republicans, I would say, especially since the 1960s, they became the country club party. They became the party of entrepreneurs, and they became the party of business leaders and laissez-faire libertarians and technically astute, intelligent people like electrical engineers who wanted to be taxed less and have access to guns. And so what's happened, though, is Donald Trump kind of took the economic populism that the broad swath of most working class Americans feel left behind. Most middle class Americans feel left behind. And so I would say that appealing to economic populism the way that Donald Trump has done is rhetorically more of a democratic strategy, whereas his implementation of his world vision, which is effectively like less taxes, less regulation, that benefits the oligarchic technocratic class.
Can I ask?
So he's actually like a hybrid.
Got it. Have you seen It's Always Sunny?
I love It's Always Sunny.
In general, I would agree with his framing of what Trump provides. Generally, I think his analysis is probably correct.
I've seen every episode up to like season 12 or 13, probably 3 or 4
I've never
times.
seen Always
Do you
Sunny
remember
in
when Max said
Philadelphia.
like, I play both sides, and so no matter what, I win?
Yeah, so I always come out on top. Yeah.
It feels like you shouldn't be saying some of this out loud. You get me?
Why?
Because it seems like you're very deliberate and open about the fact that you are using the trappings of populist rhetoric to kind of sneak in.
Oh, I'm not. Trump is.
Well, aren't you part of that? You might not like Trump, but you don't, in general, have a problem with that strategy. You just wish it weren't.
No, I
Trump.
do. I do have a problem. I do have a problem with that strategy. I am anti-populist. I don't trust the lay person. I think the lay person is, I actually use hyperbolic rhetoric when I talk about this. I think the lay person is a fucking dipshit that's easily manipulatable.
Yeah, but you've said, for example, when you're talking about P.F. Jung, your other boyfriend, that like, these are the things you say. You say these things and they speak to angst. And it's kind of like a knowing sort of, I don't know, it's a knowing kind of tactic, which seems to suggest that you actually don't value the enterprise of democracy. You think, by and large, the people are sheep that need to be led by their betters.
Yeah, no, have you ever heard of the term oblige noblesse?
I never heard of that.
I mean, I agree. I do think most people need to be led. I when it comes down to it, there's the idea of chiefs and Indians, right? And just most people do not have the capacity to be a chief, which is fine. It's not necessary. We don't need everybody to be super self-sufficient, able to lead. There's a level to it in terms of starting your own family. And so that is generally instilled into people. A father and a mother lead, but they lead by cooperation. There is always a hierarchy of these things. I do not believe in people's capacity to be as self-sufficient as I would like. I'm not as confident, but I detach this from individual responsibility versus conditional responsibility in the sense that our current system doesn't optimize these traits to allow people to be more self-sufficient. And you could say that based off our economic model, you could say this based off our educational model, you can say that based off our cultural model as well, being very accepting in certain areas of what people, the type of people that is deemed role models deemed important. You can attribute that to a lot. I think everybody has the capacity for these things, but you have to question whether that capacity can be manifested in a large scale. And right now, I do think there's ways of improvement to improve this self-sufficiency. But currently, as of today, it doesn't exist. And yes, people are just incapable. So I understand the point of view coming from counterpoints for sure.
Term.
The NBA All-Star Game is
Okay, so
close.
it's a medieval concept,
Kawhi
but
Leonard's
it's the
been cooking.
noble obligation. And so the theory behind the aristocracy of Europe that they obviously did not follow, but this was at least a part of their cultural trappings, was that the world has vested the aristocratic class with a disproportionate political and material privilege. Okay?
You have to say that
And
a little
so-
slower again for me. Sorry. Say it one more time.
So the aristocrats of Europe were gifted by God or by the world with a disproportionate political and material privilege.
Got it.
And so, but the reason why they were gifted that was because they were the military of the ancient feudal world. They were the people who regulated commerce. They were the people who governed the kingdoms. They were the people who decided what happened in diplomacy and war and all that kind of stuff. And so you have this material and political privilege, but it comes with obligations, and those obligations are to God, and those obligations are to the people. So if you're not actually, if you're just serving yourself, if you are only looking at the world as a self-interested, cannibalistic, Darwinian place, you're actually failing in your noble obligation. Whereas if you take the material and political privilege that you've been extended and you actually use it to make the world a better place for your fellow man, then you are actually fulfilling the noble obligation. And so
Feels like
I sincerely
rejection of
believe
the
in the noble
enlightenment.
obligation.
I had a conversation. Remember this guy, Nate, who was a lawyer? He used to go on Tiberius.
I love
Deep.
Nate Dallin. I
Yes.
love Nate Dallin. He's a phenomenal human being.
I talked to him, and he gives me a massive erection for Enlightenment values and for the founding of the country. And I talked to you, and it seems like you're evil. It seems like you're
I
arguing
mean, it
against
might be a little bit
Enlightenment
evil,
values.
but
But like all this shit sounds like dark shit. I don't know. Sounds like
It doesn't sound dark to me. I do think it comes from a practical point. I also believe that there is a level of dismissal in giving up on human ingenuity and human capability. I do think there's something there, but I do understand the point of view that is being referenced here.
You don't
how is it
believe in
dark? Because I think what's happened over the past 50 years is that because of Reaganite self-interest,
This seems like more of a description than anything else, which I don't see why he believes it's evil.
capitalist Darwinian leaders, we have devolved into a cult of like materialism and self-worship that could be like argued to be satanic, not literally satanic like worshiping the devil, but satanic like worshiping yourself instead of a higher power. And so what I'm arguing for is a return to principle or virtue. Now, the truth is that principle or virtue probably hasn't really existed. It's always like an ideal that people aspire.
That's what I would argue. Return to what would be the question. You have to find something that is able to be bridged all across the board, and self-worth is one of those things. So yeah. Okay.
That people strive to and they fail. But I think the problem with our society is that we don't even have the pretense of the attempt. And that's actually where Donald Trump is the most vulgar example of this, because his rhetoric might appeal to higher value or virtue or whatever. But if you look at any of his behavior, he doesn't even have the pretense of the attempt to higher behavior. And yet he's worshipped for it, which is like so perverse, it's mind-boggling.
But it feels that, the people who are these technocratic elites, as embodied in some of the Epstein scandal, say what you want to say about the extent of criminality that thus far has been exposed, though, keep an eye out. More is dropping every day. These aren't paragons of virtue. Even the people that we think of as having more charitable bones in their body, Bill Gates, These are,
dude, I was gonna break down Bill Gates the second you were done talking.
well, then just like, why would I, I was at a Super Bowl thing and some of my family members, and I just like looking around, like these are better people than the people in the Epstein files. These are better people than JD Vance. And then I thought to myself, I said, Counterpoints wants to give the country to these like robots who are using all of our fresh water for their AI farms so that we can make like porn.
Right. So that's where we have a difference in what the elites are versus what they should be, and borderline should be bullied into being. So real quick, hold on. Why, I'm going to write this down.
Yeah.
Why give power to these like immoral vampires? That's kind of the question you just asked me. But I want to break down Bill Gates as a case study real quick, because I actually think that this could be illustrative of what we're going for. So if you look at what Bill Gates accomplished throughout his life, bear in mind, we're at the tail end of his accomplishments. He probably hasn't achieved anything amazing in like 30 or 40 years, but he was one of the people who revolutionized computers that have ushered in the information technology age. And so in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, personal computing was not a thing. Computers were just like a hobbyist thing. And not just that, they didn't even have monitors. So people were using computers by doing a bunch of inputs for like calculations and software programs, and then they were running them incapable of even visualizing what work they were doing. What Bill Gates, what Steve Jobs did is they made the personal computer accessible to the layperson through monitors, keyboards, mice, software programs, accounting programs, word processors, et cetera, et cetera. And I was born arguably at the infancy of this technological revolution. You are sitting.
I was born pretty much the same, right around the infancy, just maybe a little bit afterwards. And then I grew up before the age of the technological boom, and then during the age of the technological and social media boom.
In like not the fully mature technological information revolution, but you're sitting in a pretty mature version of it compared to where it was 30 years ago. And Bill Gates and his company, Microsoft, was instrumental in revolutionizing the face of the planet in reference to the information age. So if you can have, now the truth is that there are other people. If Bill Gates died in 1972, there probably would have been another Bill Gates produced by the material circumstances.
That's what I was gonna. Yeah, no, I think that's the interesting part, which is like, to what extent do we think that we're lacking for quote unquote true genius, and even grant that these people, that we all have true geniuses. Why put them in charge of the regulatory agencies, for example, that are supposed to rein them in?
Quick, I just want to be rude real quick. Telling this.
Yeah, I guess that's a separation. One fascinating thing I found about this conversation is the understanding and necessity of individuals that have intelligence, worth, value, right? It brings about a interesting question, the trolley problem of, would you sacrifice X versus this other individual who's a doctor who can create the cure for cancer? These people are necessary. They just are. They are needed for the proliferation of humanity, especially considering we are in impossible waters. Our evolution, what we have provided, I'm not religious. I do think of things based off a practical sense. If you were a living creature that broke the norm because of certain abilities regarding creating tools and eventually having enough free time that our brains are able to develop, if that is a core function of humanity and it's doing things that are outside its own like biological core innate original function, then we would need consistent figures to consistently break the mold. Elites are necessary. That's the general summation of what I'm talking about. However, elites are individuals that also need to be regulated. Elites can be corrupted just like any other individual. Elites have holes in what they can provide just like everybody else. There is a person who is extremely intelligent regarding science, but their ability to understand the human capacity is flawed. There is genius in both understanding human nature and the psychology of human brains, and then understanding compounds and measuring things at a either astrophysical or atomic level. There's value in both. Both are necessary in terms of human innovation and evolution. But both, it needs to clash to one another and even itself out so it doesn't go out of control. So yeah, I do think this conversation is interesting, but I am also asking the question, why do they need to be in control? I just don't buy that, especially considering elites is a loaded term based off one specific characteristic. They're not Jesus, which is like the perfect being.
History without mentioning Apple is insane. I literally said Steve Jobs. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Wait, can you say something? I don't know if you came through. Just say it one more time.
Oh, I was just addressing a chatter who said telling this history without mentioning Apple is insane, and I specifically said Bill Gates and Steve Jobs.
Got it. Do you think that part of the success of some of these people who you really you put them on a pedestal of these titans of industry, but not to bring me under Obama's communist wing, but he didn't make that by himself. I mean, these were projects that grew out of developments of the government.
Yeah, you didn't fall out of a coconut tree.
Yeah, I mean, they were funded in part by the government. These individuals had help, and they had help by people who imposed guardrails and constraints. Doesn't seem like it's smart to, given that history, unconstrain them. It seems like unconstrained, ingenuity or capitalism leads to like bad shit.
Yeah, but then we need to look at the opposite as well, which is socialism and communism. And I do mean we can actually look at so some people in the American zeitgeist refer to socialism as when the government does stuff, right? And the more stuff the government does, the more socialist it is, to quote Peter Wolf or whatever that guy's name is, right? And that's a sarcastic statement because socialism is supposed to be the decommodification of basic human needs, workers owning the means of production, or more broadly, freeing humanity from the oppressions of capitalism. That's what socialism is supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
But
can we pause real quick? But putting aside the label of it, we want to socialize some of the profits of some of these expeditions, you might call them, that were partly funded by or completely funded by government research. They can make their little money here and there, but it should be, I think, an aim of government to make sure that some of the wealth and prosperity is socialized to some extent, and not just the profits aren't just individual.
You just said taxes. Yes, those are taxes. Yeah. And right now we have a pretty robust tax infrastructure. Now, I actually like we could talk about the American tax infrastructure if you want. But the point is that, like, if we create an entrepreneurial playing field that is constantly able to generate both entrepreneurialism, wealth, new industries, and all that kind of stuff, that's amazing. That's revolutionized the entirety of the human species. But then it does, like you said, and I agree, this is part of the reason why I don't call myself a libertarian. I believe in a state. I believe in taxation, because you should be able to tax people both as a matter of
but these guys don't believe in a state, right? These guys believe in their feudal little, islands, their little whatever.
Well, I think Peter Thiel is satanic, not in that he worships like a demon. I think he worships himself, and he also appeals to like Nietzschean great man philosophy and like Yarvanite, Curtis Yarvin, Yarvanite neo-monarchical feudalism. And I think that's a total fucking LARP. I think it's absolutely a LARP.
You don't take them seriously, like their network state shit, and
they're serious in their danger. They're serious and they're dangerous. But you're saying, like, why don't you have any heat for them in this regard? I do. Well, I think they're satanic.
I think you're doing two things. I think you're opening the door potentially for them to both double dip into their rents at the expense of taxpayers and broader society, and also regulate how much they're able to double dip. And that just seems like, the foxes are guarding the hen house. The Nazis are running the Nuremberg trials. It really seems like a unmistakable conflict of interest. And I don't know why you would want.
Yeah, but what policy do you think that JD Vance has proposed, or that I have proposed, that you think is putting Peter Thiel and Elon Musk uniquely and without checks to their power in charge of the United States of America?
Well, part is the deregulation agenda of Trump in the first place, which they are policies. Look at the amount of bullshittery in terms of crypto deals and AI.
Crypto deals is, I'm going to allow Pisco to finish because I think he's right on the ball on how he's described.
Bullshit. I think deregulation itself is a policy. That's number one. And then number two, it's not even necessarily a set policy that I can point to right now, though people smarter to me can and have. It's the close connection, and even just assuming right now, your worldview, regardless of whether or not they have proposed something concrete that I would put into that bucket, it seems to be something that you're exploring as tantalizing.
So he gave a very interesting point, which I do agree with. It's not necessarily a policy, even though you can, refer back to deregulation as he stated, or his tax cutting. I think these are positions that are clearly outlined on what the right is trying to do, in particular with Trump and in particular JD Vance. But I do think the other part of the conversation, like he said, is the proximity that the president now has with these elites. There's a question right now in terms of the economy that the relationship between Trump and the elites are so steadfast to one another that these elites can not only predict his behavior and price that in terms of keeping the economy afloat, but also there's a concern that there's influence from the elites to the president in itself, where he's publicly getting money from them, getting donor money from them. He's pardoning them. He's giving them subsidies for X, Y, and Z. He's cutting regulation for X, Y, and Z. That individual connection is terrifying, especially considering the top 1%, 10% of the top earners have an impact of around 50% of the total economy. 10% of people in America have control of 50% of the economy. Therefore, if we put a person in there that is willing to do things in favor of these individuals, then yeah, you can understand why having someone like JD Vance would be dangerous in this particular instance.
And
yeah, so let's explore those. And realistically, I put crypto deregulation, space deregulation, AI deregulation. I think AI deregulation is probably the most important between the three of those. I think that space deregulation is the one that I'm most interested in. I think that crypto deregulation is the one that affects the most lay person, the average lay person, okay? And so with crypto deregulation, I have to ask you on principle, because we did do this in the 19th century, should people be able to create their own currencies backed by their own perception of value, yes or no?
I'm not sure. I think it depends.
Well, there you go.
I think it depends what you mean.
What I mean is that Bitcoin, Ethereum, other coins, as far as I can understand, is that and bear in mind, I'm a very, very lay person when it comes to crypto. So if I misspeak, I'm sure a crypto expert would blow me to fucking pieces on this. But somebody kind of jokingly, but I think it's accurate enough, is imagine if your computer solved Sudokus, which generated cash that you could then buy heroin with off of the deep web. Like that's what like Bitcoin is effectively.
Wait, no, but I just want to get your normative question head on. Like, okay.
I wouldn't go that far. I don't think that's a good way to describe Bitcoin in particular, but okay.
Assume, whether or not they should be thought of as securities, that kind of thing that they should be. I think that whether or not we should treat them and regulate them depends on their usage, how widely they're used. And the more they impact the U.S. economy, the more they're used by people, I think the bigger and more important it is to regulate. Like, would I want to regulate Chuck E. Cheese tokens? Maybe not. Like Fortnite bucks? I'm not sure. But when it comes to some of these like blockchain situations that are highly traded and that are sort of viewed as commodities that, or at least as financial instruments that people like trust in some respect, I think just like, stocks, just like, things like derivatives, the government should take an interest in these markets if they have a big impact on the economy. And if they're being used, like you alluded to, potentially for other kind of like illicit or hard to trace fucking malfeasance, including in this administration with the World Liberty Financial thing, whatever Trump's got going on with that and the Trump meme coin, it seems like a huge potential for avarice and greed to extract additional wealth from poor people and from the working class.
No, that's exactly what it is.
Over to his question, I would disagree with the notion that people should create their own individual value of currency. I do think it needs to be agreed upon value to have any type of institutional integrity, because the moment this thing, as much as it shifts in value, that could create a dangerous precedent moving forward in terms of any currency that like becomes a competitive currency. There might be an appeal and things to take advantage of without regulation and decentralization. It's just, I just don't have any faith in people to be able to do that or use that properly, especially if you follow the notion that you introduce counterpoints in the sense that you do not believe in the layperson. I think this is the perfect encapsulation of that.
So the question here that I would say is that the value of crypto, from my perspective, is having an alternative currency that retains value besides the United States dollar. And I love the United States dollar. I love the dollar.
Retains
the dollar
value
is backed
is an
by
interesting
oil and
way
the
to
American
put it,
military-industrial complex and our international commercial empire. I love the dollar.
Its value
But the
has
truth
shifted
is
so
that
much.
I don't know what's going to happen with the dollar. So we're in $40 trillion worth of debt. Half of the experts, financial experts nowadays, say we're heading towards a fiscal cliff where our debt is going to be so large and the interest payments so large that we're not going to be able to take away from it, and therefore it's going to run away from us, and eventually our entire society is going to implode. Then there's another series of experts who say that the that say like, oh, well, debt doesn't matter because as long as you maintain faith in the currency and a debt to GDP ratio that doesn't make people abandon the currency entirely, then you could go on in perpetuity with a large amount of debt. And I don't know which experts are correct. So having a competitive currency, and people are like, it's not a currency, blah, blah, blah. Shut the fuck up. Anyways, it's not stable enough to be a currency. Literally read the history of 19th century currency, you dipsticks. Anyways, love my chat, but they're distracting me. The point is that having an alternative currency that's based off of a different valuation offers people at least an alternative. So let's say that the skeptics are right, that the dollar, eventually our debt is going to run away and totally collapse. Well, at least you'll be able to take your, effectively your Weimar Republic $1 trillion that you need to buy a single loaf of bread. And then you can exchange those for, 0.10 of a crypto coin. And then if that's actually backed by value, you could survive.
Could we make the same argument in terms of utilizing minerals as something to compete in terms of value? Ultimately, all the valuation of everything that we're referring to always contributes back to the US dollar. Therefore, it's one Bitcoin. Its conversion is like $40,000 right now, $40,000 or $50,000. But ultimately, it only has value because the dollar has value. Therefore, I'm just not convinced in this retrospect in terms of providing or needing something else to retain value, which I think you can't make that argument for Bitcoin for, but you can't make that argument for gold. Gold will never minimize in value. I just don't see why this will be a good argument in favor of the elites. It's something that's interested. I am interested in engaging with the conversation, but its volatility can completely screw up the market, and I'm not seeing it used in a beneficial way as of right now.
So that's where I see the value of alternative currency.
Can I put something that might sound a little crazy? I think that the push to transition to crypto or stable coins or some of these other assets has to do with a perception of control and power, and the feeling that moving away from a medium of exchange, which is dominated by regulation, overseen by regulatory agencies, where it's easily trackable, that moving away from that will take power away from the representatives of the people and put power in the hands of those that control these assets or who accumulate these assets. And I just don't know why you're open to such a notion, unless you really are abandoning the project of republicanism.
How is that any different than all you did is you just described a market? Like if I think Pokemon cards should be tradable, well, should we be regulating Pokemon trading cards?
I think in terms of if they're scams, I think that they should be open. The transactions should be taxed to some extent. They should be overseen.
Sure, but you're still allowing a marketplace to flourish with people trading on a commodity largely without regulation, as long as they pay taxes and they don't. But what we legislate is the criminal behavior associated with abuses of said currency. We don't regulate the specific currency.
Well, first of all,
commodity is probably a better word.
We do regulate. Again, there's a controversy over whether I think the Trump administration has said that these cryptocurrencies are not securities or whatever. But I think that we should have a new president with But yeah, like if it were a security, we regulate all the fuck out of that shit. Who can sell, where you can trade, public exchanges, that kind of shit.
Yeah, but you regulate the criminal behavior and abuses associated with the item, not
which
the
we're
item
not.
itself.
I don't feel that we're doing now, and I think that the motivations behind some of these guys, these reptiles that you're like, I think that you're like, well, I'll just keep the reptiles here in their little enclosure. And it reminds me of that
the
scene
reptiles are incredibly useful.
It reminds me of that scene in Jurassic Park where they're like, remember the Australian guy is walking up to the group looking at the Velociraptor pen. Like, they should all be, I forget what he says, but basically that they're smart and they're looking for ways outside of their pen. And I think one of the ways outside of their pen is J.D. Vance and these kinds of people who are linked both financially and ideologically. These are all Yarvanites, and you sound like a Yarvanite.
I just don't know if he's advocate. I still don't know if this is a description or if this is a position. I just don't know exactly. Is he advocating? So advocating for crypto is not. There's not necessarily anything wrong with advocating for crypto. Advocating for a purely decentralized market, I do think can be dangerous. The valuation of like products like a Charizard, I think ultimately, I still believe that a lot of this ultimately relies on the valuation of a dollar. Perceived value is based off what the dollar provides. $10,000 has a lot of value because it's $10,000 and you believe $10,000 is worth something. I just don't think any of this matches on. The idea will be that Bitcoin can retain its value beyond the need of looking at a dollar. If I see one Bitcoin, the only reason why I know one Bitcoin has value is because one Bitcoin is $60,000. And I believe $60,000 has value because it's $60,000. It retains its value in its own identity. I just don't believe this applies to cryptocurrency.
I mean, I think the Yarvanites, they have, this is where you and I beefed about like how much do I agree with Nick Fuentes or whatever. I think the Yarvanites have a descriptive claim that is fundamentally true, which is that liberalism, effectively maximizing human freedom, is not enough to create a functioning, healthy society. You need something more. Now, there's something more, which I think is very R-slurred and stupid, is revisiting the great man philosophies of the late 19th and early 20th century, deregulating everything, and then becoming feudal lords of an anarchic ANCAP hellscape. And also like reintroducing religion and monarchy or benevolent dictatorship as a way to police the masses. I think that's a total fucking LARP. I think it's total bullshit. I think it's a way to like philosophize the problem that I do think is accurate at the core of liberalism, which is liberalism is effectively like a negative claim. It's saying like, we should just not impede on people as long as they're meeting these certain criteria. Whereas I think conservatism to some degree, and also the Yarvanites are making a positive claim of it is good to blank. But it is good to blank is what we're fighting over. You're saying, hey, just real quick, I'll try to put a pin in it. You're saying, hey, you agree with them that there is a like a void at the core of liberalism. I agree with them in that degree. But what we're saying should be the positive claim is wildly different.
Okay. I agree.
What are you saying is the positive claim? I just don't. I'm trying to connect all the different positions, and it's not following. Not yet. It's not following.
That liberalism isn't a framework that resolves all of humanity's problems, and it means different things to different people.
It doesn't even try to.
I don't think it attempts to. I think you're right about that. What I object to is almost in a similar vein to, I forget the exact concept, the fence concept. What was this fence concept that you introduced when we were talking about religion? Chesterton's fence. That the guardrails of American republicanism have produced some of these major accomplishments that we are rightfully proud of, internet, Microsoft itself. And these people are committed to destroying it. And it sounds like for all your qualifications there, that there's a lingering respect for Curtis Yarvin and Peter Thiel. And tell me I'm wrong.
There is.
Yeah.
No, they're intelligent. Palmer Luckey as well. So that doesn't mean they shouldn't be harnessed, though. Let's walk through that. I do want to talk about space deregulation and AI deregulation because I think they're important. But I could actually probably do that as a part of the Peter Thiel thing. And actually Elon Musk is a excuse me, is actually a perfect person to launch into as well. So not everybody in the dissident right and not everybody who is a techno-feudal bro is a subscriber to Yarvinite. To Curtis Yarvin, excuse me. Curtis Yarvin, all he is effectively like a blogger who came up with some interesting critiques of liberalism and then proposed new monarchy and techno-feudalism as a way to, combat the degenerative nature of liberalism. That's all he is. He's basically a fancy blogger. And so they brought him to San Francisco and they brought him to parties in New York to intellectualize their own ambitions to become techno-feudal lords. But Elon Musk, I don't like Elon Musk. I think he's cringe. I think he's autistic. I think he's kind of an idiot. I think he's a blowhard. I think half the projects that he's promised, he hasn't delivered on. I think he's a tool in a lot of ways. And even being like the world's richest man and tweeting out at 11 p.m. saying, it's really true that money can't buy you happiness is so pathetic that it's almost like laughable how pathetic he is as an individual. However, what he did, which no one else did, and the state could have done, but there was not the willpower or the interest from the American public, is he got a rocket to go into Earth orbit, carry 300,000 pounds worth of gear, go 17,000 miles an hour, cross the planet in 90 minutes, basically going from like Cape Canaveral to the Indian Ocean in 90 minutes. I don't know if you know how fucking far that is, but that's far. And then land successfully in the Indian Ocean. And this same rocket design could be used, I'm not saying it will be, but it could be used in order to, let's say that we don't want to colonize Mars because of all the biological challenges of humans moving to Mars. We could actually still create effectively like a robotic Martian colony that studies the red planet and basically develops it for human use. And then we could also use the asteroid belt to the species advantage. And that is now possible through this revolutionary technology. I'll leave it with Elon because my next rant would be about Peter Thiel, but that was 3 to 5 minutes. So I'll just let you respond to that.
Well, I think that Elon is a prolific exaggerator.
See, I just don't get what the conversation is at this point. It's a description on Elon's capabilities. I understand the sentiment of using elites. I think Pisco probably understands that as well. The question is scope. And I don't think he agrees with Curtis Yarvin's idea or philosophy that we should put these elites on a pedestal to the point where we basically create an oligarchy that's manifested in actuality, not just kind of perceived notion based off influence and power. I don't think he wants an oligarchy of elites. Therefore, I don't know exactly what his position is. It's confusing me, ladies and gentlemen. It's confusing me.
Deadline non-compliant person who, for example, need we go on the promises about self-driving cars, the promises about Hyperloop, the delays and shitty things going on with the rocket. People are telling me that there was no payload in what was happening there. I'm not really a science guy. My critique is more about the structural powers concern. That I think that there's a legitimacy of power concern into a kind of model that's being proposed to let the smart guys be smart guys and run, hurry up and break things or run around and break things. And by the way, I talked to Stale 2000, the celebrity Reddit mod, and he also seemed to buy. Like, I was shocked when he said, "I'm a Republican." I'm like, "What? You're like in the DGG community?" He's like, "No, yeah." I'm like, Mark Andreessen is my idol. And then I sit back. I'm like, we have an issue. We're like ignoring these people and like ridiculing them too much. And I think
I agree.
No, he's a San Francisco tech bro. That's one of the interesting things about Stale is as much as he's been lolcowed like a motherfucker.
What happened? 42-34.
They're being carried into modern China. Why that's still a threat. Why Hassan Piker simping for modern authoritarian China. Apparently makes 6 or 7 figures in San Francisco.
Yeah, but I don't want Stale running the treasury.
Sure,
Shout out
but
Cold
I
Beer
would
for
want
wearing sunglasses.
Stale. I don't know what his specialization is.
There's nothing wrong with looking cool, all right? There's nothing wrong with it. If you want to be the cool guy who's wearing sunglasses to make you seem mysterious, nothing wrong with it.
But what I would want is let's say Stale was working on Boston Dynamics robots that were humanoid enough to do everything that a human can do. Or let's say he was working on war robots like the dog robots or the mule robots that are commonly seen in military industrial complex. What I would want to do is, and let's say Stale was like a multimillionaire with the intelligence in order to actually pursue this and achieve this. I would want a public-private partnership between Stale and the government that says, you are pursuing this dream. We are going to give you subsidies with limits or tax incentives with limits to achieve this public good through your intelligence. And then once the product is complete, we will use it for whatever state purpose or public purpose is actually available.
Right.
And people are
Can I just pause you right there?
cynical.
Can I just pause you right
Sure.
there? Because I would be okay in theory.
Isn't that already happening? Again, I'm trying to understand what exactly he wants.
In concept with an arm's length transaction. But what I think is being done under Trump 2.0 is not an arm's length transaction. I mean, I know this is a different kind of fact pattern, but for example, Trump is suing the IRS for $10 billion. All of it is incestuous, and the people that he has installed are all the other side, and that's a big issue for me.
No, it should be. There should be a going back to the concept of the noble obligation and all that kind of stuff. Is that a lot of these people, they believe that the noble obligation, they believe that virtues, they believe that Christianity are slave morality developed by ancient peoples to restrain the geniuses and the military leaders and the great people of their society. And if you subscribe to Aristotelian virtue ethics, if you subscribe to Christianity, if you subscribe to kind of like a systemic analysis of how society works, you're effectively like a cuckold for broader society because they're basically Sith. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with Star Wars Sith philosophy.
I'm familiar.
Okay, well, yeah, they're basically Sith. They actually think that the restraint of passion, the restraint of their intellect, the restraint of their ambition is actually oppression. And only fools listen to these systems that restrain the passion and enthusiasm and intelligence and political power of
Are you a fool, Connor?
Of individuals.
Do you buy that outlook?
What?
Do you buy that outlook?
I think the world. This is a great irony of Star Wars philosophy. You understand that the Jedi used to understand and worship both the dark side and the light side of the Force. It wasn't this binary between Sith and Jedi. They understood
Legends?
both sides.
Isn't that Legends
What's
content? That's not canon.
I did watch a YouTube video explaining the origins of the Force, and yeah, the light and dark side used to work in one. You need the balance of both. There's like this whole planet that would go too crazy if you want it gets unbalanced. It's pretty interesting lore, I'm not gonna lie.
More Disney. Is that Legends content or is that Disney?
It's probably Legends.
Yeah. Sounds like it's.
What does that do about the argument, though? Isn't like the Greek actually? So the ancient Greek actually thought that you were socially and intellectually R-slurred if you were incapable of exploring other human emotions besides like anger and lust. And they also thought you were like intellectually R-slurred if your only preoccupation was agriculture or war. And so my point is that like I'm using stuff.
I get that he wants a balance between peace and stability and regulation and human ingenuity and innovation. Like, isn't that what we already have? I mean, I do believe there's something to be said. We could deregulate a bit. But if you're not advocating for complete deregulation to allow intellectuality to flourish, which is what JD Vance and Donald Trump want to do, if you're not advocating for that, then what are you advocating for? I just don't know exactly where the disagreement is.
Star Wars as an analogy, but you're asking me like,
Yeah, but the
hey,
Sith are the bad guys.
Are you Sith? It sounds
Yeah.
like you're sympathetic to the Sith.
So I
and
think
I'm saying like
this is a
the
perversion.
Sith have a point here, but they're dumb and larpy here. And
I think
that's
it's a
true.
perversion. I think that you're perverting George Lucas's vision. Bringing balance of the Force doesn't mean a balance of Sith and Jedi. It means defeating the Sith. The Sith are the perversion. That's how in the original. No, that's how George Lucas intended it. That how did Anakin bring balance? By defeating the Sith, not by
that's not even true.
Yeah, but there's something to be said regarding the Star Wars lore that Anakin Skywalker, his emotions did lead him down the path of dark side, but the attempt from the Jedi Council to completely control his life and completely control his feelings to turn himself into this perfect soldier is also problematic. It helped lead Anakin to the dark side ultimately. That's a big conversation. The Jedi Council were mistaken on trying to abandon the importance of rage and emotion and love. So that's another big part of Star Wars. And I think Luke was eventually the one who was able to master it. But yeah, I don't think it's simply good guys are good. I don't think that's the premise. The good guys beat the bad guys.
That's not even true in the Jungian meta narrative that he used as the basis and the hero of the 1,000 Faces that he used in order to write Star Wars. It's not even true.
Well, I'm just telling you what George Lucas said.
Okay, well, I'm telling you, George Lucas, like many things, is very good at world building, but he's actually just an arsler. He's actually like an incredibly dense human being. So when it comes to the Jungian meta-narrative, which George Lucas also used as the backdrop for Star Wars, is in Sam Witwer, whatever, the guy who plays like, he's the voice actor for Darth Maul, but he's also like a huge Star Wars nerd. He was the character model for Star Killer. That guy basically says like, no, I've talked to George Lucas, I've talked to Dave Filoni, this is how it always works, okay? So when the light side becomes too powerful, you can predict who's going to win next based off of what's happening in the narrative. So if you see the light side winning too much, guaranteed the dark side's going to come back and balance it out. Same thing with, the dark side's winning too much. The light side's going to come back and balance it out. And that's part of the Jungian narrative. And also, when it comes to the, you were saying the legends, which is no longer canon, I don't give a fuck. If it's good lore, it's good lore. The ancient lore was that you're effectively socially and intellectually arslurred if you are not capable of taking aspects of the dark side of the Force and integrating into your personality. Like Jung calls this integrating your shadow. It's acknowledging the darker, more malicious, more self-serving, more animalistic impulses of the human condition, not allowing it to enslave you, not allowing it to dominate your life, but understanding that that's a part of you and not hating it and running away from it. Because if you hate it and run away from it, often what happens is the darkest part of you that you are ignoring and suppressing, it comes back in weird, fucked up ways. And by the way, I'll wrap up this rant. But if you look at conservatives who are overly anti-promiscuity, overly anti-homophobe or homosexual, overly anti-drug, overly anti-whatever, oftentimes what do we discover about these people in the long term? They're secret drug addicts, they're secret homosexuals, they're secret sexual degenerates because they're suppressing.
Conceptually, I think what he's saying is fine. I think it bars in reality that there is this kind of balance. But again, I'm trying to see what is the point.
The dark parts of themselves, and then it comes back in a more aggressive way.
Do you view homosexuality as sexual degeneracy?
No, not necessarily. Themselves, and then it comes back. secret drug addicts, they're secret homosexuals, they're secret sexual degenerates, because they're suppressing the dark parts of themselves, and then it comes back in a more aggressive way.
Do you view homosexuality as sexual degeneracy?
No, not necessarily. I would say that promiscuity, this is actually a conversation I had with Mr. Girl. It's not homosexuality like boys kissing boys and girls kissing girls that I view as degenerate. That's fine. It's the promiscuity that correlates with being a sexual subculture of the Western world.
I'm not sure I followed that, but okay.
That's pretty easy to understand. I think it's the well, I think I understand what he's saying. There could be a whole different interpretation, but it's the idea, especially in his comparative analysis, that these people are condemning the aspect of being gay. It's not Christian, X, Y, and Z, but they love to have profuse sex with men. So it's like all these factors combined to one another, and instead of being like holy o thou and all that stuff, I guess they're having sex outside the marriage. They're fucking a lot of people that they say they wouldn't because it's anti-Christian, and men or women. So it's all these factors that play into this level of like whiplash of these traditional conservative values. I understand that. I think it makes sense if that's what he's saying.
Okay, so hold on. I'll make it really simple for you. Boy kissing boy, is that bad?
No, I think it's beautiful.
Okay,
I think it's beautiful.
So boy having unprotected sex with 30 men who all are not wearing condoms within 12 hours. Is that bad?
I think it's unsafe.
While high on hard drugs.
I think it's unsafe and therefore bad.
Okay. We agree.
Yeah, but in virtue of its unsafeness, not in virtue of its quote unquote degeneracy, I think. Or
sure.
I mean, he's just saying that it's bad because they're having a lot of sex. It's 100. It's degenerate. Like, let's be very clear. I love to have sex. It's a degenerate behavior. I don't think having just a whole bunch of sex with a whole bunch of people is good in any way. But I'm not saying you can't do it, but let's not pretend that this is a practice that should be repeated on a large scale. Emotionally, it can be very negative. Physically, it can be very negative in terms of, like you said, safety. Societally, it can be very negative in terms of the absentee fathers who are impregnating multiple women potentially. Morally and conditionally, in the sense that the condition it applies normalizes a behavior, I think that could be very problematic. There's so many reasons why it could be problematic, for sure.
But that's where you and I don't agree. So I've probably told you this before. Do you understand like the historical understanding of the word degenerate?
No.
Okay. So generate, make, generate, often associated with life, degenerate, fall apart, entropy, all that kind of stuff. And so in the 19th century, when they were selling tonics and opium and cocaine and all that kind of stuff through your local magazine in the late 19th, early 20th century, what they were doing is they were saying, take this tonic. It will generate you. It will give you life. It's this elixir that will make you amazing. And the reason why they called like addiction or promiscuity degenerate is because probably, you guys aren't going to agree with me because you're all fucking liberals, but it's okay. They correlated promiscuity and addiction with degeneration. And so if you look at meth addicts, if you look at heroin addicts, if you look at alcoholics, if you look at promiscuous people, their physical health, their social health, their ambitions, when they become enslaved by these exterior forces, they degenerate. So when you're degenerate, look at whether or not it's good for you on a personal level. If it's good for you, keep doing it. If it's bad for you, it's degenerate and it's going to hurt you.
Your worldview scares me more than Hassan.
I think the term degeneracy applies to societal standards versus individual ones. I don't think it should be applied individually because that's too subjective, personally. But that's a different conversation.
On
That is
So Pico says something here
scares me
that
more.
this is
Degenerate,
what
it's gonna-
made me want to stream this, and I just don't understand why he made this statement.
hurt you.
Your worldview scares me more than Hassan.
That is fucking psychotic. That is an insane statement to make. You think simping for 20? You think understanding the concept of degeneracy is worse than
it's
simping
everything.
for the 20th century regime?
Now, this is not an attack on either individual. I think they're both provide a lot of value in terms of this conversation. I think it's kind of crazy that I don't even think I'll make this into a clip because it's too loaded in terms of understanding ideological concepts. I will just say this, that I don't think his worldview is more dangerous than Hassan. I think it's more of descriptive on human reality. I don't think he's advocating for a level of oligarchy of elites controlling people's behavior. I don't think that's what he's advocating for. I don't think he's even indicated as such. I think he's always said he wanted a balance between the elites and the people. I think that's a normal thing to say. And Pisco's confusion is probably my confusion in the sense that I don't know what he's trying to say. I don't know what his point is.
Teams that are like murderous and shitty. What the fuck? Why didn't you just say that?
No, not what you
We're gonna
just
pull that apart. By the way, I'm not letting that go.
Not just what you just said. It's like all of this. It's like all of it. It feels. I'm not telling you that like I could back it up with an argument right now. It just feels wrong to me. Like the things you're telling me, it feels alien.
You're liberal. I'm conservative. You're evaluating things on whether or not there is exterior harm caused. I'm saying that the social institutions that we have created over centuries or millennia have wisdom rooted within them. So even if there's stupid shit, like there is stupid shit, like who is it? Paul from the Bible. He says homosexuality is bad. No homosexuals, no boys. It's all bad. That's dumb. But if you look at the historical context of it, he was probably watching bisexual and homosexual promiscuous pagans engaging in promiscuity, catching diseases, having bad relationships with their family, and all the degeneracy, quote unquote, that was correlated with that. And so he came up with a dumb prescription. The dumb prescription is all of homosexuality is bad. I don't say all of homosexuality is bad. I say if you're attracted to boys, you're attracted to boys. Kiss boys, okay? If you feel like it.
Well, yeah, because a lot of these tech people are
unprotected sex with 30 men in 12 hours. That's dumb and degenerate, and it's going to hurt you.
It's just funny because like a lot of what you're now categorizing as degeneracy, or have always. Sorry, I didn't mean to claim that you're just inventing it now for the first time. So sorry if I came across that way. Elon Musk, I want to impregnate as many people as possible. Like you have obviously
he's a degenerate.
Yeah. So how are we confident? And they're all like, this is the Epsteinite class or Epstein class or whatever Ossoff said. Like you are simping for the Epstein class.
Great quote, by the way.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like it seems like you're simping for the Epstein class, if not Epstein himself.
Do you think all rich and powerful people are virtueless degenerates?
No.
Okay. I mean that's my point.
But the ones who are like sort of
for their
clustered
lack
here,
of virtue.
But the clustered ones here, like Thiel, Elon, Zuckerberg, Andreessen, all these people, these network stake people, these are all people who are, I feel like, even if it's not factually related to any criminality, spiritually related to the Epstein class.
Sure. Well, number one, I think you can harness bad people for good ends. As a matter of fact, I think that's just a existential truth. I don't view myself.
I do think harness bad people for good ends? That's an interesting ethical question because it borders on something that we all know, right? The United States did recruit some scientists that were Nazis and they pardoned them. We know that. Now, I don't think they did this because they're evil people, but I do think they did this because they wanted their information and their research. And there's a question on if we should allow that to be the case. And I think so. I believe in human evolution. I believe we should consistently continue to evolve to become the best versions of ourselves. In order to do that, you have to take advantage of every opportunity that is afforded to you, but you also have to weigh out the harm that is being caused and reduce it as much as possible or nullify it altogether. Therefore, I am in favor of that, but I am in favor of it in the way that it's conditional usage. I think you can still say that you're doing things in the best interest of humanity without completely sacrificing your morals to do so. I think you can kind of keep it consistent. Yeah, it's an interesting question, but I do think it's valuable, especially when you think of things on the larger scales. Like a proposed hypothetical for people would be if there's a guy who's a clear psychopath who's done terrible things, would you recruit that? If that person could also cure cancer, would you allow that person to work on the drug to cure cancer, and you would compromise by allowing him to do it in his own home, but it's like house arrest in order to save a bunch of people's lives? And I do think that hypothetical really instills like what your moral values mean to you in the overall scope of helping society.
As a bad, or wait, hold on. I don't view myself as a good person. I view myself as a bad person who's doing as much good as I can. Mm-hmm. And that's also like a pretty Christian perspective on the human condition. But can you name historically, later the better, but if you have a contemporary example, that would be fine. Can you name a historical figure that you admire that I would be familiar with?
A historical figure that I admire that you'd be familiar with. I admire Abraham Lincoln. I admire. Okay. Sorry.
No. Let's just work with Abraham Lincoln for a second.
Yeah.
So, are you aware of Abraham Lincoln's character flaws in reference to, and also his political flaws in reference to fighting for the Union?
Yes.
Okay. So right there could, and by the way, you could bring up other characters or whatever, but my point with you is I could go through each one of the people that you admire and I could say, look at all these flaws you are worshiping at the feet of and want to empower these flawed, evil people who have caused all of this harm in the world. But as Joe Biden says, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative, right? So you have to take the flaws of individuals as historical.
Well, that does beg the question what the alternative is. Maybe it's like an alternative scenario. If we don't take advantage of the elite, what would happen to the world? We would stagnate as a society and eventually die off. That's probably what he's referring to. But okay, all right.
Forces, and you have to decide whether or not the juice is worth the squeeze.
I see. Well, Connor, here's what I view of like the Hassan communist stuff. It doesn't work. The system doesn't work. It's been tried.
Yeah.
This shit it's a joke. It's a LARP. And maybe that's why I kind of don't view it as seriously. I think it's been discredited in the eyes of the American people. And I think it's just stupid bullshit. Okay. And people need to learn to pay their taxes. People need to learn to just get a job. And that's going to happen. And so I don't really view the worst of all possible worlds as particularly likely, but I think that you're empowering actually powerful people who are scary.
No, everybody's terrifying. Before we move to, I want to press you on Hassan and me being scarier than Hassan.
Okay.
I want to address something real quick for AI deregulation. Have you ever heard Peter Thiel argue why he wants tech deregulation?
I don't recall.
Okay. So there's a phenomenal conversation. I think it's incredibly transparent. I invite you in your chat to check it out. It's Ross Douthat, Douthat, interviewing Peter Thiel, and them talking about why Peter Thiel does what he does. Okay. And Peter Thiel talks about how JD Vance is a disappointment and he hasn't gotten enough out of his support of electoral politics, and as a result, he might not even associate with electoral politics anymore because the juice wasn't worth the squeeze.
Mm-hmm.
You can watch the video and see if you think it's a sincerely.
Well, I think
well,
just to be clear, I think these people are raking in millions and millions and millions of dollars. I think that they're robbing us blind, and I think that this administration is letting them do it. I think we will never truly know the scope until we get a Democratic president to investigate this shit. We will never know the scope of the graft and just bullshittery that's happening right now that we don't even know about.
Sure.
But
you understand,
yeah.
You understand if it was just materialism, then Ross Douthat, excuse me. Sorry for associating Ross. I think Ross Douthat is actually a moral person. For Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, it hasn't been about the money for a really long time. They have enough money that they could do whatever they wanted to do.
That concerns me. It feels like they want to make
for the rest of their lives.
I think you and I agree. They want to make tech fiefdoms and to be able to just operate.
That's important, though. Well, yeah. So the nature of their fiefdom. Let me articulate this real quick, and then I want to press you on Hassan.
Okay.
So, Peter Thiel, in his interview with Ross Douthat, I invite you to check it out on your own time. Basically, Peter Thiel says that he's looking at technology that's happened since the agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution. And what's happened was we had a huge burst with the agricultural revolution, where all these new agricultural, like basically 3,000 years ago, all these agricultural technologies came out that helped us harness the planet for our own benefit. And that was like a huge tech boom that stagnated for around 1,800 years. And then in the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, we had the Industrial Revolution, which also birthed as a micro birth the Information Revolution. And so there were almost what we thought was an unending horizon of technological progress. Construction materials, oil as a product, energy industry, automobiles, airplanes, name it. And there was like an endless frontier that technology was going to revolutionize. But what he sees and what scares him for the human species, according to his interview, is that there is a funnel of technological progress where we've developed so many parallel industries, what seems like to the maximal ability that humans are capable of, that we have now, these technologies are mature. Commercial air flight is mature. Automobiles are mature. Agriculture is mature. And so the innovation that makes the species like vibrant and makes the species vital is slowing down. And he fears a future in humanity where technology is so stagnant that effectively like we live and die exactly the same way, the way that generations of medieval people did, our ancestors, or the pre-agricultural revolution humans, the way that they lived and died was the same way their ancestors lived and died, arguably for hundreds of thousands of years, because that's how old we are as a species. Mm-hmm. So with this technological and existential anxiety, he thinks that there's a funnel and AI might be the key to ripping open the next generation of technological progress for humanity. So AI is so capable, or hopefully, ideally, would be so capable of coming up with new technologies, of developing said technologies, of maximizing said technologies, effectively making a human brain that's smarter than the smartest humans, and then giving it unlimited information for development. That is the key to breaking open this funnel for the next generation of human technological and sociological development, and he wants to be the guy that does it. Okay. So he's using, I'll wrap up in a second and just let you engage with that. He's using Palantir and Anduril and all of these companies that he's in as military industrial complex technologies that the government is subsidizing his project. But his long-term project is trying to rip open human potential via artificial intelligence generation. So anyways, I'll let you deal with that first, because that's...
This is a conversation I'll be very interested to have with someone. Counterpoints, maybe even Peter Thiel in the future. I just don't think, I don't, maybe it's an understanding, maybe it's a difference of opinion. I don't see the cap that he sees. I do think AI can explode, but I also think there has been other projects after the Industrial Revolution. There's other innovations that have been created that created a massive boom and a huge shift in innovation. Now, the thing is, our shift in innovation has become more so based on other fields and other sectors, and I do think that is a problem. But the social media age created a whole new sector of career paths with content creation, with video, with streaming, and that opened up so many pathways where every single job field can be highlighted or marketed in a different way. And it affected education because there is an alternative to education that has officially been established to have a fruitful career. That changed the wealth class that are not traditionally built off of the structure of like nepotism and generational wealth. It was just a new, and not only that, it also opened up the gaming sector, for example, as well. It gave more individuality for athletes in sports. The social media revolution is equally as impactful. Now, I don't have the economic data in terms of how it, the immediacy or the percentage of how it increased and changed the economy, especially with factors like COVID and COVID that has changed our society in a huge way. But ultimately, one thing that is very clear, because even you could say in these other periods that a major thing like the world wars played a big factor in how they became a revolution in the first place. Regardless, the impact is very clear. So the fact that he has a concern that, oh, we haven't done this thing doesn't make no fucking sense because of the social media revolution. Now, if he's arguing that now we have to hit the next level, what is that next level? I agree the next level is AI. Like, I 100% agree the next level is AI. I just don't see this concern. I don't see this worry, because we just are hitting the tail end of the social media revolution, and we still haven't fully optimized its capabilities. So yeah, I think this is just nonsense. I think this is a red herring to allow for own personal ambition. I don't think this is a problem with humanity's innovation. And I think you could argue that some of the innovations going into, like I said, sectors that do not proliferate human growth. Entertainment is a byproduct of a lot of these things that's becoming a huge industry in itself. And I think that's a bit problematic in terms of its influence and its impact. But just because that's the case doesn't mean we can reroute what it can do, because that influence and impact can provide itself in other ways. Yeah, I don't think this is, I need to really talk to someone that believes this to extrapolate the significance of what they're referring to. It sounds very existential pilled in comparison to climate change activists who have the same type of humanitarian worry, but I don't think it breeds in like reality.
A lot of info.
Yeah, it kind of feels like I'm being sold something. I feel like that pitch is like
So, aren't you sold shit every day? Didn't you eat breakfast today? Didn't you have to buy your breakfast or your caffeinated beverage? What is being sold something? Why does that make it automatically worthy of derision or criticism?
I don't think it automatically does. I'm just telling you my feelings when I hear that. My feeling is that it doesn't get to the heart of my fear. It could be the case that AI is the next breakthrough. It's the funnel. It's the what the stopgap before we get the explosion of whatever we need. I could even grant that that's the case. What I know is I want whoever's in charge of those AIs to be accountable to something other than these alien desires and these tech kings who do not have our best interest in heart and would sooner see us be like fuel, Matrix style. That's what I don't understand. Why you think that you can control these people by cozying up to them as opposed to, being hard on them. I want a government that keeps them constrained.
I agree.
Yeah. So number one, I do too. Number two, though, I want to say so.
That also begs to what is your position? This is why Connor is confusing me here.
We use the Matrix as this analogy, okay? Are you and I, and the Matrix is effectively a energy system, right? Human beings are the batteries. They generate bioelectrical energy. They're in these little pods of organic material. And then the Matrix, the race of robots use them as batteries as an energy source. Okay, so that's the analogy of the Matrix. And so it's supposed to be this techno oppressive, analogy for being enslaved to the human race, or not even the human race, but being enslaved by capitalism. Let's be real. They're probably leftists. And so the only way that you can achieve emancipation is by looking at the world as it is, dark and ugly and fucked up, and then trying to break free from the system that has enslaved you. Okay, so that's the Matrix. Do you and I exchange energy right now?
This is going to be annoying. I think yes, but it depends what you mean.
Okay. Does our chat exchange energy with us? Do they give us their time, attention, and money and ability to create content?
Yes.
You're in the system, bitch. It's called society. Okay? Being socially responsible to other people, being accountable to other individuals, that's just called society. So this
that's just an
dream
equivocation. That's just an equivocation. I didn't mean,
it's not at all.
Well, I'm telling you what I meant when I said they would use us as batteries. I meant literally, they would sooner see us enslaved and used for our bio heat signatures. I didn't mean it in the kind of we're all connected because we're all star particles.
I think that you have an incredibly cynical view of, and by the way, the reason why I'm cynical about these people is because I still think they're libertarian college kids who got way too much money. They just happened to age another 3 decades, and they read Ayn Rand once, and they think that that's just the way the world should be, and they're R-slurred, very R-slurred. That's why I don't like them. That's why I think they're stupid. That's why I think their power needs to be checked. You are subscribing because you effectively at the beginning of this conversation asked me, why give power to these vampires?
Yeah,
that's not what you said, but that was the thing of what you said.
I kind of view them as
you have an
Strahd von Zarovich, or I kind of view them as the 9 lords of hell.
Sure, but you could watch these interviews and understand these people in their own words and their own visions, and they're Elon Musk doesn't go, oh yeah, I totally disregard the dignity of humanity. I think all these people are plebiscites that I should harness for my Matrix program. No, he's talking about exploring the stars and the existence of a multiplanetary species and the threats of the galaxy.
Yeah, and
how he wants to achieve.
And you've fallen in love, Connor.
This goal, this dream.
You're enamored by that vision. You're enamored by it, and I think that
I share it.
You've been charmed. I think you've been charmed.
So you
again, I don't think there's that much difference of opinion here. I think Pisco obviously has a very negative opinion, as he should. That's what Connor Points said. But I think we all agree that these people are necessary for society's evolution. Okay. Just because you have a difference of perspective, I think Elon Musk is a piece of shit. I think you can make a good faith argument that he believes that he knows what's right for society and he's doing this in the goodness of his heart. And I also think you could also make the same argument with the same logic that this is evil. I mean, I just don't. What do
You
we
think
talk
that he doesn't believe his own words?
Depends on which they are. I think he's a
Okay.
delusional person.
So you're saying that
That
you're
chocolate Oreos
saying
is
that
probably good.
he's a liar.
Starship,
He
which
is a liar.
is,
He's a knowing liar on a lot of stuff. Whether it comes to his companies,
but
how well they're doing.
Do you think if he could snap his fingers, I would say he's a liar and a failure. Okay, because he hasn't delivered on the products that he's delivered, despite Tesla being one of the largest available readily usable electric vehicles ever produced, like one of the largest mass-produced electric vehicles, despite the fact that parallel companies, not Tesla itself, but Waymo has a better auto driving system that might be taken to truck export eventually. That we actually do have a Starship that is capable of lifting 300,000 pounds and traveling 17,000 kilometers an hour, and it's capable of easily landing and being refueled. These are all amazing technological developments, but you're saying what he said and what he's able to achieve are different, therefore he's not telling the truth about his ambitions, which doesn't follow at all.
I think that he has some very delusional ambitions. I do think that's probably true. I do think he's a liar and he doesn't care about people. He doesn't care about anyone but himself. I think he's a narcissist.
I agree.
I think these
that.
people are disgusting scum.
Yeah.
Okay.
50-50.
Do people have to be good people in order to
No.
develop the technologies that advance human beings?
No, but I just don't think that we should.
Like, do you need Einstein, or do you need the guy who developed the atom bomb? I forget what his name is. But do you need them to be like
Oppenheimer. I need to
fundamentally
watch that
good
movie.
and moral people in order to harness their technology?
No, but I don't want to empower them by having their minions in charge of the government. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm not making much progress this way. So I guess I want to approach a different way. What's your number one issue in the 2028 election? What do you care most about in a candidate?
Probably that the gap that seems to be radicalizing most Americans, that I think stems from the material conditions, actually be addressed. So
Pretty broad. Can you narrow it a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Give me a second. Although you're probably going to say this is too broad. I can make it more specific after I probably say it too broad. But rapid demographic change, existential technological shifts, the dissolution of the social fabric, and wealth inequality, I think, are the things that are radicalizing our population. And we need a competent and intelligent leader who is not only aware of those
Inequality gap, wealth distribution. Did he talk about information dissemination?
shifts, the dissolution, but rapid demographic change,
Rapid demographic change, I just don't agree. I don't think that's a big deal.
existential technological shifts, the dissolution of the social fabric,
Potential technological shifts, it's not an important policy position either.
and wealth inequality, I think, are the things that are radical.
Wealth inequality. What do you say?
Say it too broad. But rapid demographic change, existential technological shifts, the dissolution of the social fabric, and wealth inequality, I think, are the things that are
dissolution of the social fabric. I guess it really depends on what you mean. But the other two, I just don't think those are important issues. But difference of opinion.
radicalizing our population, and we need a competent and intelligent leader who is not only aware of those problems as being like what's motivating radicalism in our country, but somebody who actually has proposals. So if it was an abundance lib like Gavin Newsom proposing new infrastructure for the United States in order to usher in the next generation of American innovation and development, I would vote for Gavin Newsom. And then I know that I would want to address your fear about JD Vance before I say,
because you are considering him, and as between him and I don't even fucking know. Let me just think of someone. Raphael Warnock. As between him, let's think of another person. Josh Shapiro. It sounds like he would be a contender there.
Yeah, we should probably talk about because once again,
and that doesn't make any sense to me.
Centrist Dem, mixed economy capitalist who forgets about the topic of gun control, I can easily check that box. Socialist who pals around with Hassan Piker or is a social democrat, like let's say Bernie Sanders was running against JD Vance. I'd probably vote for JD Vance. Let's say AOC is running against JD Vance. I'm probably voting for JD Vance. Let's say Gavin Newsom is running against JD Vance. I'm voting for Gavin Newsom. So you asking me for a commitment before we even get
I just lost.
there is not possible. And if you want,
Okay, so if we played the game that Connor was playing, or not playing, I don't want to minimize his the things that he cares about. In terms of dealing with technological, he said technology, social fabric, wealth inequality, demographic shift. So, okay. JD Vance will be harder on immigration. But I don't think Bernie is like open borders. Wasn't he a pretty hard on immigration as well? So that might just be a wash, because I don't think Connor believes that we should have no immigrants. That's probably what JD Vance's position would be. So let's say that's a wash. Technological shift, very clearly. That's very clearly JD Vance, because he's a technocrat who Peter Thiel and whatchamacallit, Peter Thiel and Curtis Yarvin and Mark Andreessen all like vouch for the guy. Wealth inequality, Bernie's definitely better for wealth inequality. And then social fabric, that's too vague. That's too vague. Oh my God, I fucked up.
mental in my chat for the past, and they in their own writings they've used socialism and but do you need them to be like fundamentally good and moral people in order to harness their technology?
No, but I don't want to empower them by having their minions in charge of the government. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm
People are plebiscites that I should harness is by looking at the world as it is, dark and ugly and fucked up, and potential via artificial intelligence generation. So anyways, I'll let you deal with that first, because that's a lot of info.
Yeah, it kind of feels like I'm being sold something.
Energy system, right? Human beings are the batteries. They generally responsible to other people. People are plebiscites that I should is. But do you need them to be like fundamentally good and moral people in order to?
Can you narrow it a little bit?
I chat for the past 2 to 3 weeks in order to describe the legal analysis of ICE shootings and fake. I think Reagan the fake. I chat for the past.
Can you narrow it a little bit? About anyone but himself. I think he's a narcissist. He is a lot. He's a knowing liar on a lot of stuff. What
fingers? I would say he's a liar and a failure. Okay.
About anyone but himself. I think he's a narcissist. No, but I just don't think
is. But do you need them to be like fundamentally good and moral?
Can you narrow it a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Give me a second. Although you're probably going to say this is too broad. I can make it more specific after I probably say it too broad. But rapid demographic change.
Okay.
As between him and like, I don't even fucking know. Let me just think of someone. Raphael Warnock. As between him, let's think of another person. Josh Shapiro.
Against JD Vance. I'm probably voting for JD Vance. Let's say Gavin Newsom is running against JD Vance. I'm voting for Gavin Newsom. So you asking me for a commitment before we even get there is not possible. And if you want that contention to make sense, we'd probably have to go back to the Hassan topic.
No, I think that I'm gathering some of your worldview, and I want to admit that I was wrong. I thought that you were an embarrassed Democrat, and I think that was wrong. And I just wanted to tell you that.
Well, I appreciate that, because, you know, I risked angering and losing my chat for the past 2 to 3 weeks in order to describe the legal analysis of ICE shootings and military intervention and all that. I risked my audience in order to speak the truth as I see it. And so I think a lot of liberals in my chat realize that I am different than them. And I've been saying it for years, but they didn't believe me. because I said, oh yeah, we both agree that Trump is an existential shitty threat to the Republic of the United States, and I care about the Republic of the United States. So they're like, oh, you're just a liberal because every Republican has forgotten that we care about a republic. But they didn't realize.
I don't think that you're a Republican in the more traditional sense, though, because I think that you advocate.
What do you mean traditional, though?
Reaganite. I don't think you're a Reaganite Republican. I don't think you're a Reagan.
Well, I think Reagan was a mistake. I think Reagan, the neoconservative elements of Reaganism, actually having balls and being anti-communist, I'm totally down with that. But the level of deregulation that Reagan ushered in and its continuance for the past 3 to 5 decades, the Reaganite philosophy infecting politics to the point that like endless neoliberal deregulation and free trade and endless neoconservative military. What's that?
I'm so lost.
Yeah, I'm kind of lost too, because it seems like he was advocating for deregulation, but now he's saying that didn't like Reagan because of his deregulation policies.
Lost. It sounds like you're it sounds like you are skeptical of capitalism. You're skeptical of socialism. It's really
a monster. It's a dragon you have to ride. It's a beast. You can't let it do whatever it wants, or else it eats you. But you have to ride it.
Okay. It sounds like you're straight up a bit of a fascisty, gripery, techie guy.
Okay, let's go to socialism as a comparison, because this is actually, it was a frustrating part of your commentary that actually got me miffed a little bit, and I think it'll illustrate. I think it'll illustrate some of what we're talking about. So, are you familiar with the history of early and mid-century communist China and or the Soviet Union?
I dabble. That's all I'll say. I'm not an expert at all.
Okay. I would strongly recommend analyzing this history. Wikipedia, random movies like Chernobyl, comedies.
They're
like
horrible. Here's what I'll grant you. Like, they're horrible regimes. They don't, in my opinion, the systems have been discredited to the extent that China has emerged as a global power. It hasn't been as a kind of command economy type situation, and I think that in general these projects have ended in abysmal failures. And attended to them were all sorts of what I think are rights deprivations and yeah.
But this is where like historical illiteracy is going to make it so there's like a huge gulf between us. Okay, because China, to me, modern China, is the natural emanation of socialist ideology and communist ideology, because it reverted to state capitalism. So communism. So hold on. Number one, I'm going to put these 3 things down or real quick to you. Okay. So in the 19th century, socialism, there were pre-Marxian socialist philosophies. And what they were trying to do is they were living in the Industrial Revolution, and they were saying there's something wrong with capitalism. We're generating so much wealth, and yet the average person is still a peasant. This is fucking miserable. We must free the working class and all of humanity from the oppressions of capitalism.
I'm starting to get confused. I'm starting to not understand exactly what Connor's point is. I'm starting to reach that point.
Socialism in general, pre-Marxian socialism, post-Marxian socialism, Marxian socialism, they all share the desire to emancipate humanity from the oppressions of capitalism. Okay? Now, Marxist socialism, which by far was the most popular one, says that decommodifying basic human needs and workers owning the means of the production is the way that you achieve this emancipation. And then ultimately, the end goal should be establishing a moneyless, stateless, classless society of egalitarianism. Okay, and they in their own writings they've used socialism and communism interchangeably, but over analyzing this work, we've kind of used communism as like the end state and socialism as a stepping stone. That's kind of the way that most people use it. Okay. Now,
why do you do these
itself,
can I interrupt real quick? You do these like kind of like etymological historical analyses before, as we're having a conversation. It can make it frustrating to, exchange ideas.
If you were paying attention, this shouldn't be frustrating at all. This should actually be fascinating.
Okay, fascinating me.
Because this is why Hassan is dangerous.
Well, I didn't grant that he's not dangerous in his ideology. I just don't think that he himself.
I listened to this before while I was at the gym. I'm now listening again and really paying attention to what they're doing, because you only can pay attention so much when you're lifting and pumping that iron. You feel me? But after listening to Connor again, I agree. I also don't think it serves the best purpose of expanding the dialogue in and itself. Because I'm trying to understand positions, and you're giving me descriptive claims of things that are analogous to the ultimate harm, and I don't see what you're trying to do with this analogy. I don't see what you're trying to prevent. I don't see what your action is in the current day. I'm just not seeing it right now.
That ideology presents a threat in the United States right now.
Okay.
I also don't know why you're against China. China seems
like
totally compatible with the kind of system that you're advocating for. I don't know. It seems
weirdly
like,
enough, we could get to that. So the reason why I don't like what you just did rhetorically, and I'm sure it's not on purpose, but the reason why I don't like it is that you're saying for the basis of this conversation, I just need to acknowledge that techno-feudal freaks who I might align with halfway on some descriptive issues are more of a threat than Hassan Piker, which is true.
No,
you're totally right.
What I was trying to say was I'm more scared of them than Hassan. And I was describing a feeling like
you should be. They're more dangerous and more effective than Hassan Piker. That's fundamentally true.
You seem like nonplussed, and so I'm wondering why you're nonplussed.
Because what I don't like about your content, what I don't like about Live and Learn, what I don't like about a lot of progressives, including Soy Pill.
You don't like Soy Pill?
No, I like Soy Pill as a guy. As a matter of fact, I have to commend him for the way that he treats his body. I think the way that he lifts and eats and all that kind of stuff, he should be an example to the unwashed lefty masses of how to conduct yourself. So no, I actually like Soy Pill on an individual level.
You like him on the individual level of his body.
Yeah. Yes. But it's what his body says about him. No homo. So, but the reason why I get frustrated with what you did rhetorically is that I think that in order to understand why most right-wingers don't understand shit about socialism or leftism or communism or any of that shit. They haven't studied it or engaged with the material to the same degree that I have. But if you want to understand the borderline existential fear that Americans experience when they have like the Cold War as a generational trauma or memory, then you have to understand this history. You have to understand the ideology that was birthed in the middle 19th century. You have to understand how it revolutionized Europe in the early 20th. You have to understand the dystopian police states and authoritarian nightmares that it ushered into the middle 20th century. And you have to understand how this idea continues to limp on into the modern zeitgeist and how it still poses a threat. And
I hear that all. What is being very direct question I would ask is, how does this apply to Bernie or AOC? And if the only thing he could say about that is that because it's tangent, or because it can be tangential to Hassan Piker, or they can be tangential or connected to Hassan Piker, then I'm just not willing to buy that, because they're not Hassan Piker. They never will be, and they don't advocate for things that he advocates for. And we're seeing this manifest in real time, that once you get into politics and really understand what the fuck is going on, Hassan Piker's philosophies are dog shit. his principles are dog shit as well. So I just don't think any candidate, even if they're like left progressive, will ever fall into those traps. I don't think so at all. Just because a lot of what China was advocating for was based off like this kind of socialism uh, principle. Just because that's there doesn't necessarily mean the outcome will be communism. And the socialism principle, I'm not talking about its political or governmental structure or economic structure. I'm talking about the idea of trying to mitigate capitalist wealth inequality and give more to the people on the ground, the workers, which is understandable. And I think we all can agree to that. I also think that the only reason why he's outlining this is to try to prevent a future, a situation, an historical past that, if manifested again, will cause so much harm. It's a harm reduction. He wants to reduce harm. It's a harm reduction philosophy. However, when I compare that to what technocrats can provide, there is no analogy you can put there. It's more of an unknown. And I think that is more dangerous in many ways compared to a bad thing that happened in the past and being able to deal with it if it pops up again because of historical record compared to an unknown future that can lead to the end of America. Especially this harm from the past didn't lead to the end of America. It just led to a dark history of America. So I just don't think these are comparable notions either.
If you're not interested in that, that's totally fine. We don't have to talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it to my chat immediately afterwards because it's what I care about.
No, I'm just saying, like, I understand that you need a great deal of context to understand anything really fully. And I think that what I'm raising as an objection is to the flow of the conversation and to the extent that the historical whatever is, needed in a particular instance. I think it can be sort of raised more naturally. So essentially for this purpose, right? Like, I'm willing to grant that these regimes are horrible and
Some guy in the chat made a comment because he didn't understand what I was saying, and he's simple-minded based.
horrific. And I'm not a fan of the USSR as it existed. It predates me a little bit. I'm not a fan of Beijing. I'm not a fan of communism. I'm not a communist. I'm not a socialist. I just don't understand.
Okay, but do you understand the underlying motivations that you have even posed? That you've said this to me repeatedly in this conversation. You sound like a groyper. You sound like a dissident right-wing freak. You sound like a techno-feudalist.
I have that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I said that. Yeah.
Okay, so progressives and some liberals who are sympathetic to progressives and people who are sympathetic to DEI, CRT, social democratic societies in Scandinavia, and socialist and communist regimes of the 20th century, oftentimes they have rhetoric that spans the political gamut, and they also have similar motivations. And so the fear is that in ignorance of this history and in ignorance of this philosophy, you guys are effectively useful idiots for far leftist freaks. That's actually the thrust of it.
You can say that. But I can just tell you, I think that their plans suck. We're not gonna let these tankies be the president, and to the extent that we're just doing, I don't know, a social encounter.
I just don't think this begs into reality. I just don't see. Just because they are becoming more and more sympathetic to the human condition, which is a core philosophy of socialism, doesn't mean that this will lead to socialism. It just doesn't. I just don't understand this kind of perspective. I think it'll be more concerning when the Donald Trump equivalent gets elected as a Democrat. That's when it gets really concerning. And I don't think Mamdani is that. I do think he genuinely cares about people, but we'll see. If Mamdani turns into the problem that Counterpoint is eliciting, then I think the Democrats have to do a lot of self-reflection. But I just don't see that happening. Not at all.
Encounter with some of these people, it's on no different terms than you might have a social encounter with someone who has horrible views on the right or indeed the left. I think the difference is that you're expressing some ideological sympathy with those people, whereas I'm not.
But I don't agree with you. I think you are expressing ideological sympathy. I think your desire to socialize, which can be good and can be bad, to regulate, which can be good and can be bad, to use state power to check industry, which can be good and can be bad. If you do so in ignorance, you can be the Trojan horse for these nefarious ideologues. And this is what frustrates me. So in the middle 2010s to late 2010s, there was an entire left-wing social media movement to say that the contrarian right, the libertarian right, the I used to be a liberal, but that entire, like Dave Rubin, Tim Pool, all that kind of stuff. There was effectively a social media movement of right-wing ignorance that was playing into the propaganda of the far right, but they were still pretending that they were the moderate center.
Yeah, but they're grifters.
And okay, but hold on. But you were grabbing their audience and these creators by the shoulders and you were screaming into their face, hey, you are the useful idiots for the far right. And they're like, no, we're not. And then you're like, this is how fascism works. And they're like, you're alarmist. Everything's fascist to you. That's what's happening right now in this conversation.
Yeah, no, but it feels like people say that. But did you hear Fuentes on the Super Bowl show where he was like, they're making overtures to white people? Did you?
Yeah, but there's also a clear retention and dividing line from the most prolific figures on the left to these tanky types that pop up. There's a condemnation there, a clear condemnation, because this will never be a majority outcome. The entire right has been completely devoured by this fascist rhetoric and leading to wanting this kind of overarching principle of power. And it's not, I don't think it's like ignorance. I do think it's just kind of like what Pico said. It's moral simplicity that allows you to grift to powerful outcomes. Temple will grift towards money and influence. Dave Rubin, I would say the same thing. Every single center right guy, I would say the same thing. So yeah, I just don't think this is comparable, because at the end of the day, Democrats in general will not vote in these tanky types. They just won't, unless there is a core consistency of these individuals are doing what the democratic principle that you outlined is happening in real time, focusing on individuality, liberalism, and pushing good things for the people. What does this guy say? Remember Mao and Cultural Revolution? 30 million people dead, mostly hungry, didn't care. What do you think has changed? Nothing. What are you yapping about? I don't know what you're yapping about.
Did you hear that analysis? I don't know if you saw that. It was.
I haven't, but on the docket tomorrow was his Epstein analysis. So maybe, and somebody said that
it just feels like this CRT shit and this Red Scare stuff is it's anachronistic. The Red Scare stuff, okay, he said
what's
anachronistic.
I've heard the word. I don't know what it means. Can you tell me what it is?
The wrong era. It's misapplying a concept or a fear in outside of its proper historical context and in a place where it doesn't fit.
See, but this is my frustration with this conversation. We could have been done with probably within the past 5 minutes. We could have been done with the descriptions of the ideologies, how they manifested in the early 20th century, how they manifested in the late 20th century, how they're being carried into modern China, why that's still a threat, why Hassan Piker simping for modern authoritarian China is a uniquely repulsive political analysis that is similar to Nick Fuentes simping for Nazi Germany and for Joseph Stalin. We could have done all that and you could have understood my perspective, but instead you're saying that I am out.
But the difference is that Hassan will never retain power. And also the influence of MAGA's grift to this kind of extreme started with Trump. Trump immediately had power. So I just don't think this is. I don't think there's any comparison you can make to the left right now because all these crazy tankies will never gain power. Hassan Piker is being, for the most part, universally condemned as a crazy, insane tanky. I don't know what we're doing here.
Side of time and place, and my anger and philosophical and political analysis is just. It's just Red Scare nonsense. It doesn't apply to the modern era, which I'm telling you, I'm not the ignorant party. You are the ignorant party. You are the one who doesn't understand.
So let's tackle that. So it's my contention that Marxist-Leninism and communism, as it was practiced in the Soviet Union, has been discredited, and that by and large, it is not a threat globally or internally, especially internally. It's my position that America has never really had much of a threat internally with respect to communist ideological infiltration, save for some espionage incidents. There was espionage, no doubt. That happens between states as a matter of course. But in general, it's not my belief that we are in any danger of a communist takeover in that sense. But you think that that's not the case? You think that that's yeah, go.
Yeah. Yes. So, okay. So there were socialist and communist revolutions in the early 20th century amongst a variety of societies, and there was a. I'll try to address the global stage simultaneous to the cultural stage. It's going to be tough, but I'll try to thread the needle. And I'll try to be quick as well. I'll try to speak quickly. But I would really appreciate it if you and your audience tried to absorb the information that I'm conveying.
We will do our best.
So, in the early 20th century, there were revolutions, socialist and communist revolutions, but they didn't occur in capitalist societies as predicted by Marx himself. They occurred in feudal societies like Japan, or not Japan, like China. I need to slow down so I'm actually accurate. Like China and like Russia. And so a gentleman by the name of...
So at that point, that makes the comparison anachronistic, a word that I just learned thanks to Pisco. It just doesn't beg. So after everything you're about to elicit, I'm just don't see the correlation.
Gramsci said, why is it that socialist and communist revolutions occurred in feudal societies, but they did not occur in capitalist societies? And what he realized is that the military industrial complex, the police state, culture, the politics, all that kind of stuff, these were counterweights against the socialist revolution. And so actually, arguably in the United States, I don't think he brought up this specific example, but FDR was actually an anti-communist and an anti-socialist because he created a welfare state that still was harnessed to the mixed economy capitalist system, but it placated the masses. It soothed
I heard he was sympathetic.
Revolutionary sentiment.
I just want to pause right there. I heard that FDR was sympathetic to Joseph Stalin. People make the argument that he was a fellow traveler. You reject that?
I don't know. He actually, weirdly enough, you have to come up. So you kind of have to come up. This is why the descriptions are so accurate. You need to decide whether or not you think a moneyless, stateless, classless society is the end point of human civilization. Yes or no. That's going to determine whether or not you're a communist. So actually, let me go ahead and just ask you. Do you think that in an ideal world, let's say we conquered all of the frailties of the human condition, do you think that we should live in a moneyless, stateless, classless society as like the end point of human existence?
With idealness embedded into it?
Yeah.
I think idealness would imply a stateless society. I'm not sure that it would imply a classless one. But I do think that the state is inherently, inefficient. And so I think idealism almost...
In an ideal world with perfect humans, I would agree. It would be stateless because everybody would be self-sufficient. It would be moneyless because everybody would be able to exchange things in a fair manner based off this ideal world of fairness. And it would be classless because everybody would be equal. Yeah, I mean, yeah, but okay. I hope he doesn't try to apply this to socialism abroad in terms of like everything leading towards this one destination. That would be, I think that would be very disappointing.
Presupposes.
Okay, remove idealism. Do you think that it would be the preferred state of like the natural human endpoint of our civilization should be to live in a moneyless, stateless class of society?
I just don't know what you mean by natural endpoint.
Okay. We've evolved as a species, both physically and culturally over millennia, right?
Yes.
Okay. And we live on a planet together that has communications that allow us to communicate with any person on the planet. Yes?
More or less, yes.
Okay. And money is a way that we track our transactions on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yeah, among other things, but yes.
Okay. And states are governments that are effectively our peers, not our peers, but they're also our superiors who wield power over humanity. Yes?
They wield power over humanity, yes.
Okay. And we have classes, namely the bourgeois and the proletariat. The bourgeois are the people who own industry and disproportionately profit from said industry. And the proletariat are the working schlubs who make industry turn.
I'm not sure if that's correct according to theory, but I'm accepting your framework of it. Sure.
Okay. So if we could advance as a species another 10,000 years, should we be able to create such abundant wealth that you don't need money? You just walk into a grocery store, you pick an apple off of a shelf, you don't have to pay anybody, you just walk out and eat it. And you can do that with all commodities, okay? All commodities are consumable without paying a dime to anyone, okay? Then stateless. Should there be a governing body that's in charge of you where if they decide that you're out of line, they're able to incarcerate you or use force in order to compel you to
let me just get to the end there. No, because we're operating in idealism, I think that there's going to need to be some sort of monopoly on violence such to work out the differences between people that might come to pass.
Okay, arguably you're not a communist then, because you think that even at the end point of humanity, we will probably need some form of state
to manage conflicts between people, assuming lack of ideal conditions. But of course,
I don't think just because you believe that this is a perfect utopia, that makes you a communist. But you ask for ideal world. So this ideal world doesn't live in the practical world. I think that's kind of a ridiculous notion that he tried to use. I tell people this to help people understand the point of a society is we should always strive for a utopia, but a utopia will never exist. I firmly believe that. And the utopia that he's outlining would be under those principles. I don't think it'll ever exist. I don't think about things in the way that they should. I don't think about progression in a way to achieve this perfection, because it's impossible to achieve this perfection because humans are flawed. But you have to go forward and try to be the best version of yourself and achieve things as best as possible. So conditioning into human nature, that idealism starts removing itself.
Of course.
Okay. And then the only other thing that I want to hit on, just because I think it actually fulfills the definition, I understand this is kind of dry for a lot of people, but I don't care because it's actually important.
Okay.
In an ideal world, I keep using ideal, but at the end point, 10,000 years from now, do you think that human beings,
Okay, if he uses a different term, ideal, if he removes ideal and it goes like 10,000 years in the future, yeah, it's impossible to achieve this. Impossible.
and I, whenever we enter into an entrepreneurial venture, should we effectively work as collaborative peers who have the same rights and autonomy within the institution? Or do you think that we need to maintain the hierarchy of bosses and owners in order to create and perpetuate institutions? Do we need the separation between bosses and workers?
I believe in rights, unless they're really socially not useful. And so I think that there, because I believe in rights, I think one such right is the right to own certain levels of property. And I think that
okay, you're not a communist. We've arrived at the answer. You're not a communist. You think that moneylessness is interesting, but you don't have a preference on it. Statelessness seems kind of utopian, and then also it seems like you're skeptical about the prohibition of classes as well. Okay, so you're not a communist. So let's move to Marxian socialist. Okay, decommodification of basic human needs. Should every single human being be provided food, water, and shelter without cost to themselves as a moral good for our species?
Depends. All these are going to be it depends.
I'm going to put you down as a half socialist there for the first half.
No,
Let's
I mean
do the second half.
If it really is, such a existence of abundance that it's all of these things are just trivially easy to produce, and everyone would be in favor of that, right? Like if it were so easy, if it were just really that easy to provide, I can't imagine you wouldn't want the government to guarantee it. And I just don't see how this gets to our.
So the reason why is I don't want that until we have a race of slave robots, Boston Dynamics autonomous robots, who are capable of replacing human labor.
I guess I don't have clarity on what level of idealness then we're talking about. It's like some amount of like very like a bunch.
I'm there with Pisco. I don't understand what we're doing here. What are you trying to frame? What is your ultimate worry? I think you're giving too much credit to Hassan Piker. I really just think that is it. I think this guy, Hassan Piker, is a piece of shit. But ultimately, I don't think he'll ever have the level of influence on democratic politics as you're saying. Not in terms of like influencing people and their votes, but in terms of actual action on the floor of understanding how government works and putting people in the positions of power to influence how things go. Because the moment someone that truly believes in this kind of craziness that Hassan believes, whatever position that they acquire, they will fail tremendously. They just will. That's why they ultimately end up working within the system, because they realize that's the best way to help the people.
But not enough that there's robots, and not enough that you can't just make sure that there's no more human strife. Like, I don't know what we're operating in. I don't know how it relates to our underlying dispute, which
it's okay. I'll just put you down as a quarter socialist. We're making progress. It might not seem like we're making progress from your end.
Aren't you on that view? Aren't you?
Only once we get a slave race of robots. So once we get a slave, which by the way involves.
That means you're changing the hypothetical. That's what's going on here.
Getting the techno-feudal lords to mine the asteroid belt for rare earth minerals that's necessary to produce a Boston Dynamics robots at scale, to the point that Boston Dynamics robots are able to replace human labor.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to put a flag in the play. I am lost, Connor. I don't know where we are.
Well, I'm not.
I'm with you on the journey, but I'm just telling you that I need help. I'm out here. I'm on the. I don't know which.
It's totally fine. All that's happened is, imagine I'm a therapist, but I'm trying to figure out what I'm McCarthy. Okay, I'm in the Red Scare. I'm trying to figure out whether or not you're a communist or a socialist. Right now,
but your litmus test of determining people being a communist or socialist is shit. It doesn't make sense. What your analogy, your hypotheticals, your ideal world ultimatum, it doesn't prove anything. I don't get what we're trying to do here.
You are not a social, or you're not a communist, excuse me, and you have if there was a socialist scale, you are 25% socialist.
Okay.
What? So I'm going to decide whether or not we execute you at the end of this. Okay. So the decommodification of basic human need, we just covered that. You said if we could, we should. Okay, you're a quarter communist. Now, workers owning
decommodification. So yeah, if it's easy to do, why not?
Yeah, if it's possible, like you made it possible, bringing up robots, then yeah. But you're cheating. I'll be honest, you're cheating. You're adding a condition, but Pisco can't. I don't. You can't add a condition. It's okay. There's so much. I don't like what Connor's doing here. I think this is big tinfoil hat. syndrome.
As for basic needs, isn't that what you said?
I'm not making a moral. I know the McCarthy thing probably implies like a moral judgment, but I'm not. We're also just being descriptive. So you could like, I don't have the capacity to actually incarcerate you for being a socialist or a communist. I hope you know that. So
I'm aware.
Being a quarter socialist is not going to result in your incarceration. But I want to figure out the other
like
half of the calculation.
Okay.
I don't like the description of you calling me a socialist. That's what I would say, because I'm not. I don't believe in socialism. It's just, what are we doing?
So let's say that you're dictator of America. You don't have to worry about the Republican limits or the capitalist limit. You don't have to worry about anything. Would you think that you should change the economic model of the United States so that all workers have stock in the institutions they work for?
No.
So let's say that you start, okay, you already answered the answer, which is great because that just means that you're a quarter socialist, not a full, not like a 3/4 socialist. But I just want to illustrate the idea just in case, okay? So let's say that you go work at a grocery store and there's 100 employees, or let's just keep it simple, 10 employees. When you join said institution, you get like a 10% stock. When the business does better, you get a profit share, you get a vote on changes to the business, et cetera, and that is state enforced. So you are not capable of making a private venture where there's one boss and there's employees without stock benefits. The state will say, pointing gun to your head, if you work here, you have a stake in the company and you get to vote on how that company carries out its duties. And I think you said no.
Yeah, I believe, but that's just in virtue of
vote. I don't know about vote. I do think there can be a standard where, like, you've worked in this company for X amount of years and you get a ownership stake. I think that's fine, right? I was vested into this one company I worked back in the past, and years later I got like $4,000 out of nowhere. I was so surprised. I was like, where did this come from? It's because I had a stake in the company, and then the company was sold, and then they gave me my money. So I think there's something to it, but like ultimately, I don't know what this proves. I don't know what we're doing here.
my belief that people should have rights with respect to property and making businesses, unless you can show that there's some overwhelming social cost to it, which I think there are for certain market failures. And so there are some markets that I would make illegal. For example, the market in slaves.
Okay. You are, congratulations. You are not a communist. You are 25% a socialist.
Oh.
Okay.
Now, what does that have to do with anything?
Yeah, I don't know.
This has to deal with whether or not you're a fellow traveler or useful idiot for communists or socialists.
Nobody in
I
the
thought we were
government
talking
is
about
useful
FDR.
idiot.
I mean, we still are, because we just say that FDR is viewed by communists and socialists as a
Some
traitor
people,
to the cause because he ushered in the material conditions that prevented socialism and communism from coming about.
I've heard the
other people
opposite.
view him as a
Yes.
fellow traveler as socialists.
Yeah.
We're still on topic, bud. Just because you're not tracking doesn't mean that we're not on topic.
Well, I don't
So,
even know what the topic
anyways.
is at this point.
Number one, I'm trying to figure out how much of a socialist and a communist you are. Number
got it.
two,
So we are on topic,
now I'm going to try to illustrate how socialism and communism has like infected the last 100 years of the Western zeitgeist.
I remember. Okay, you're trying to explain to me why communism remains a threat internally in the United States. Yeah, that's where we're at. Got it.
Communism, probably not so much, but socialism, absolutely.
Okay.
So let's talk about this real quick. So with Gramsci, and by the way, I'll try to be brief. I know I'm not brief.
I just think the comparative analysis is just doesn't. I don't get it. I'll be honest. Like, I understand what they're talking about, or for the most part, I understand the point of what he's trying to do. No, actually, that's the part I don't understand. I don't understand this point. The overarching conversation is elites and their influence on the government, or the influence on society, and how much control regulation they should have. And then the bigger conversation beyond that is like JD Vance versus AOC. I just don't get you like bringing up these different things of potential socialist principles that have changed the America. And some people have said there are certain things that like Social Security and like Planned Parenthood that have been good for Americans. But ultimately, just because there's some things here and I think Connor's kind of advocating for a pure, nothing even related, even closely to socialist. And we live in a mixed economy. I don't get what's wrong with, if it's a good idea, it's a good idea. Just like if it's good lore, it's good lore. This kind of fear mongering, this no matter what, we can't even let like a speck of dust contaminate our society of socialism. I don't get why that is an important conversation. I don't get what the bigger implication here. I don't get what we're trying to do here. I think there's levels of like every system, because everything is embedded based off human nature and human want and human greed and human flaws. So you can find every like problematic comparison to the system overall. I don't get the purpose. I don't know what we're doing.
Give me a second, okay? Gramsci said, why do feudal societies become socialist or communist? Why isn't this happening in capitalist societies? And it's because of what I mentioned before. Law enforcement, military, churches, families, pop culture, all that bullshit. Those are counter-revolutionary forces. Those are forces that basically make the socialist revolution impossible, which is why it happened in feudal societies. Well, with feudal societies,
Okay.
I should probably keep going with Gramsci. Yeah, I'll go with Gramsci, and then I'll return to the actual socialist societies as practiced. So with Gramsci, he said that what's actually necessary is a cultural revolution. We need to bring down the defenses of capitalism and mixed economy capitalism first. And the way that we do that is we create art, we create social discourse, we create cultural,
we have been doing all of this. All of this has been happening in America. Okay.
progress. Like, by the way, CRT, critical race theory is actually like a grand baby of Gramsci. There was a guy named, I want to say it's Marcuse.
With all race and genders, it becomes the elite versus everyone else. United we stand, divided we fall. I mean, I agree to that.
Marcuse in the 60s and 70s was a guy who studied Gramsci, and he was like a popular German philosopher or some shit. I don't fucking know. He was a college professor in California, and Marcuse basically was the guy who started, like CRT that then became CRT. But Marcuse was an unapologetic socialist who was actually ejected from the country by Ronald Reagan. And so Marcuse said, not just Marcuse, but his contemporaries, they said, why don't we take the proletarian bourgeois analysis of Marxism and why don't we apply it to social institutions? So, as an example, what's going to happen in the Marxist view of the world is the proletarian masses are going to become so dissatisfied with capitalism that eventually they're going to overthrow the bourgeois. They're going to ban that class, and we're actually going to have a truly egalitarian society. Well, if we look at America and if we look at the Western world, then white supremacy is bourgeois. That's the bourgeois analog within social affairs. It's better to be white. You're richer as a white person. You have more social privilege.
Again, how is this being manifested to the AOCs of the world in comparison to JD Vance? Because JD Vance advocates for all your concerns hits JD Vance way worse than it hits Kamala. I'm not Kamala, AOC or Bernie. Oh my god. I'm kind of reaching the level of frustration that Pisco had. 1935 to 1980, Wagner Act equals union power equals 50% middle class. Let's do it again, and this time don't let them divide us by turning us on immigrants, black people, women. 1935 to 1980, the Wagner Act equals union power equals 50% middle class. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Don't know about the historical context of the Wagner Act, but your overall principle and premise is the idea of coming together to challenge these institutions that are owned by the elite. I'm there with you.
The Hispanics are like swarthy barbarians. The black people are criminal savages. The Asians are like smelly backwards, blah, 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 right? Like white supremacy is the philosophy that is bourgeois from a cultural analog. So the masses, both the people who are oppressed by white supremacy, but also the people who are part of white supremacy, they need to have their consciousness reoriented to the point that they agree that white supremacy needs to be abolished. And so if you look at this,
we'll give you the floor. Just all the communists and lefties in my chat are screaming that you're butchering it. I'm not saying you are because I don't know, but I'm just letting you know that that's what they're saying.
Even if they think I'm butchering it, it's a decent enough summary that like you can still see the patterns of what's going on, because white supremacy
is not going on the Democratic side, bro. I need to see what this overarching point. We need to land the plane. A livable minimum wage, public medical care, public education, equity, inclusion, and diversity. For the most part, pretty good. We do need to improve all these areas. I agree.
Can be bad. Like, we can agree that white supremacy is bad, that a race should not be supreme above other races. We can agree that like racism towards oppressed groups is not good, and therefore we should reform as a society. But the liberal push for this revolution or whatever, or the liberal push for a more just society, is saying we're individuals.
Spitting thumb.
We have individual rights. We have individual sovereignty. We have individual dignity. And therefore, we must extend the benefits of liberal society to all people, regardless of what they look like.
Okay. But they still believe in a state, so...
Like where they come from, what language they speak. Okay? That is a liberal version of
sure.
eliminating white supremacy. Whereas a leftist version says, well, that's not enough. Because what you've done is you've taken the privileges of white supremacy and the privileges of capitalism, and you've extended it to the maximal amount of people within the United States. But even if we created a liberal anti-racist society where everybody was extended dignity and nobody treated each other poorly based off of their country of origin or race or whatever, we still participate in a economy that disproportionately profits off of black and brown suffering. You've probably heard Hassan Piker and other leftists use the term global south or imperial core. I saw you be confused by the term imperial core.
Yeah,
so you as a Hispanic person,
the leftists don't represent the Democrats. This is such an annoying conversation, I'll be honest. It's the elite. The elite just happen to be white men. I mean, a good number of them for sure, but there's a lot of elites that are not white men, so it doesn't really mean much to me. I don't make it about an identity. I make it about a status. Consolidation of power is not good. People, corporation, entities need to be small to be transparent, accountable to the people. Small enough? That's an interesting conversation. But I do think there needs to be effective regulation to ensure the things that you're referring to.
Could give you all of the benefits of white supremacy. You could walk around not caring about your race.
I agree with you.
Well, everybody could say, "Good morning, Mr. Pisco. Excellent day today." You know, they could give you a high credit score. You could be nominally, not even nominally. What do they call it? You could be honorary white, but you still benefit from an economic system that disproportionately fucks over black and brown people. Therefore, you're participating in a racist system.
Yes, leftists suck. We agree.
So this. Sorry, go ahead if you have a question.
No, I just don't know how it relates to. Okay, so I'm
there with Pisco at this point. None of this is like, what the fuck are we doing right now? We agree, leftists suck. Yes. What's the point? Leftists suck. Like, I agree with all your sentiment. I agree with your analysis. I'm never just like, what's the point of this?
Except your framing of the theory, just for purpose, because I don't fucking know Marxist theory. People in my chat, I'm telling you, Connor, they are losing their minds the way I've not seen them before. But putting that aside,
what is it? And by the way, half of these R slurs in your chat, if they came on fucking stream to debate it, they would just piss their pants.
Oh, yeah.
They would be like, "Oh, I read Marcuse and he said this," but it would be totally irrelevant to the thrust of what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, I just don't know how it relates to the claim of like danger. Like, whatever you're talking about, that's not what people in the Democratic Party are thinking about.
Exactly.
Yes, it is. 100% it is. You haven't seen this rhetoric omnipresent in the cultural zeitgeist for the past 20 years?
Racism,
Anti-racism.
so white privilege and that shit.
Yes.
What does that have to do with China and Soviet Union?
Great question. So what I would say is that you're assuming that I'm taking like a moral perspective on this, whereas I think I'm just being descriptive.
I don't think you're being descriptive at all at this point. I think you're over exaggerating and hyperbolizing the nature of Democrats, and then equivocating it to MAGA. I just don't bed this into reality. I'll be honest. I don't think any of this is that relevant to what's going on. Yeah, there's some weirdos that talk about like white people and say all of them are racist. Well, for the most part, all these people fall in line into the systems and the power of the Democrat. Like, these people have always existed, and their influence will always be minimum because the Democrats are always led by the common voter. It's just not meaningful enough for me.
It takes the same formula of oppressor
That's crazy
oppressed.
talk.
It takes the same formula of class abolition, and it applies it to social affairs. Okay, arguably feminism is the same thing. And there's different schools of feminism. There's like liberal feminism, which says take all the privileges of being male, give it to women. And then there's like abolitionist feminism, which says, no, that's not enough. We need to abolish the category of man and woman and male and female because they come with all these like.
But initial feminism is take all the privileges, is also leads into the liberal philosophy of being treated as equal. And these abolitionist feminists that you're referring to, these more radical feminists, they're the minority. They don't beg into influence. We only do. Oh, so you're a woman? A thump. Segregation and redlining and voting restrictions equal division tools. 100%. 100%. I definitely agree. Don't get me started, woman. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see the panic that Connor's seeing. I think we always, anytime it gets too far, we always push back because we go to what the common person wants. The common person was pushing back against like all this trans stuff, and now we've pushed back. The common person was pushing back against the immigration stuff, and now we're pushed back. Like Democrats are a pendulum swing, and they swing to what the people's needs are. Like the right has become a party that is influenced by the elites. The Democrats are a party that's influenced by the people. So I just don't get why this matters so much, because the idea of socialism is also embedded into an idea that enforces a very particular type of people with power. But the people innately have not asked for this type of power. Unless he's saying that because the Democrats are advocating for the people, that the people eventually are going to want more power and influence. At that point, he's really just advocating for the idea of Democrats being worse than the ideals of the right, which has been pro-elite versus pro-people. Oh, I think I'm starting to understand. Okay. All right.
Expressions in their nature of categorization.
This guy says you have it backwards. Oh, you must be MAGA, bro. Because there's no way you think that MAGA are pro-people with all the elites they have. There's no way. That's just delusion. Come on, dog. And we still go pay $10,000 to $20,000 less than men. So Donald Trump is doing tax cuts to help the elite. Republican tax policy helps the elite. Florida's tax policy, which is a conservative policy, taxes poor people more than it taxes the elite. Donald Trump have allowed Elon Musk to get a position of privilege in the government in Doge. Donald Trump individually meets with the elite. He has a meme coin that allows people to invest so you can meet with him privately. It's just all the elites work hand in hand with Donald Trump. And this asshole tries to think that Democrats are in control with the elite. You're just dumb as fuck. You're a dipshit. It's just all the elite pitting workers against other workers so they remain in control and hoard wealth. Yeah, I'm kind of more in that. This other guy's just dumb as fuck.
And pretending like, and here's the other thing that kind of frustrates me with you pretending like I'm just speaking gibberish to you.
I'm not saying you're speaking
Vosh
gibberish.
Talks like this. Progressives talk like this. Liberals who don't know where these ideas emanate from this, they talk like this, like they're describing air, like they're describing the state of nature.
Yeah, just like the way that I view the most left-wing people in the Democratic Party express themselves is on terms that are like familiar, I think, to most Americans. It's certain policies, it's certain theories of the relationship between the state and the people, and it's things like Medicare for all. It's things like child care, child tax credit stuff. It's like it's these
is healthcare a basic human need? Is healthcare a basic human need?
Yeah.
So isn't making it universal a push towards decommodification? I'm not making a moral judgment.
Someone says you were being oh, so you're a dumbass who can engage with all the factual claims I just made. So that's all you could say because MAGA is stupid. Well, specific MAGA is stupid, not all MAGA is stupid. Some MAGA, no, not all people who voted for Trump are stupid. Some MAGA cultists like you're dumb as fuck. Democrats have more money because they try to live the equalities of equity, inclusion, and diversity. If we're talking about the average Democrat, they have more money because they are more educated. The 1% are full of people that are Republican, that are MAGA. They work with Donald Trump not because they believe in his principles, but they know that he himself could get them more money, and they can deregulate to also get them more money. It's very clear. But hey, man, this poor person who's going to be going like, hey, man, you go, billionaire. Keep on doing what you got to do. Fuck out of here. I think I understand Counterpoint's claim now. I just think that I think it's heavily flawed because if you believe in the Republicans' aspect of aligning with the elite, that also, but there's less barriers to that because there's less people in. And the minimization of the barriers will create a situation where these people will accumulate more and more power, deconstructing American society to a complete feudalistic oligarchy. There's more of a chance to achieve communism through the right than there is to the left. I don't really understand the concern for the left because their power can't be abused in the same way. It's ridiculous. Best workers are ADHD and autistic, will work in data and systems analysis. There is a level to that. They're able to pay attention to things that they care about. Yes, without it, we die. Yeah.
Judgment. I'm just asking if that pushes in a leftward direction.
I guess I need to ask you what you mean by decommodification.
So decommodification. So commodity, as far as I understand it, is like a consumable, tradable item or service within an economy. Okay. So basically, like, yeah, go ahead.
If that's what a commodity is, then it depends who you talk to. There are some people who want, I guess, the decommodification of health insurance markets, not necessarily healthcare. There's some people who want, broader universal healthcare. There's some people who want public options, so that means it runs the gamut. But I mean, that would be true, presumably, of like, I don't know, any kind of, even for example, like the NHS. There's like parallel private public systems, and I'm
in Australia. We used to have public health care and support. I lost my job because I got unwell. I'm zero income support. I joined a union. Fair enough. The government definitely needs to step in sometimes, especially when unforeseen circumstances take place.
I guess I don't know if that would fit.
But I think we can agree. I think we can agree that the right wing and the capitalists of our society favor deregulation and treating healthcare as a commodity. And if you're broke, who gives a fuck? Good luck. Right? That's kind of their attitude towards healthcare.
Yeah, it just feels like how much.
I'm not making a moral judgment.
It just feels like how much, not if. Well, and to the extent that the language is about, you shouldn't have, this shouldn't be private or whatever. I don't know that people are advocating like get rid of all private healthcare of any kind, or make it so there's no secondary insurance market for healthcare or whatever. And so, like, I don't know if you consider
Sure.
the NHS
but
in
we
the
can
UK
also-
to be decommodification of healthcare. Do you?
Well, I'm not even making a moral judgment, man.
I'm not asking.
I'm
moral
just.
judgment.
I'm,
Do
what I'm
you?
trying
All
to
right,
get
so
you
I'm
to
going to put my
say-
big points. Do you consider the NHS to have decommodified healthcare in the United Kingdom? Yes or no?
No, it's still a consumable commodity.
Okay, so
Yeah, I agree with you, Thumb. Everybody deserves an education.
and I mean, that would be a way more, I don't know, publicified version of healthcare than what is being promoted in this country, even by the most left-wing politicians, which is something approaching Medicare for all, which would still like presuppose private healthcare, private hospitals, and that's just not the case with NHS.
Sure. But the only thing that I'm trying to get you to identify is that the right wing, when it comes to healthcare, food, and water, and capitalists who sometimes can be left wing or liberal, capitalists say it's all a commodity, it's all a market, it's all consumable. And if you don't have the means to consume said service, tough shit, you're in a free economy. Whereas I would say left wing folks, not even necessarily socialists or communists, they would view redistributing wealth in order to make a necessary asset more available. They would view that as moral and good. And
So what? Yes, I also agree they would. Is that a bad thing? Are you just saying Are you saying that it's better for people to treat things as pure commodities? I don't. I need Connor to just say it. What are you saying? I'm getting frustrated. I don't know what you're saying.
they would
What are you
push
telling
for
me?
that. And that's where
These conversations
Medicare for
have
all
been having for
is
decades.
obviously not.
These are policy conversations that exist within a liberal framework that have been. I don't view like this like march towards communism that we're seeing any more than like when Clinton was proposing universal healthcare in the 90s. Well, she's certainly not a communist.
Yeah, but you can, but this is something that's actually pretty easy though. Can you acknowledge that there are more like free market liberals and there are more socializing or social democratic liberals?
Yes, I can acknowledge that.
Okay, then of course what ends up happening is Destiny's like, in my opinion, like just a straight neoliberal. He basically like he wants the economy to keep like, or he wants the state to keep things fair so we don't have a revolution. But basically, if he doesn't deem it an essential good or service, then he basically says, fuck you, figure it out, right?
Okay.
Whereas I think that there are more progressive and more left-leaning people, like, so for instance, Kyle Kalinske, who say Medicare for all. Medicare for all is a just position, making sure that every single person has the health care that they need, regardless of class, station, race, whatever.
If it was put to a
good.
vote, I would vote for Medicare for all.
Well, there you go. But that's why I said you're a quarter socialist. You don't believe in the full decommodification of human needs. You just think it's a good idea if we're rich enough to do it. And then you also don't believe in workers owning the means of production. So I would say you're probably a social democrat, but you're also probably like a quarter socialist based off of definition.
Doobie, how am I not allowing Connor to connect the dots? This is Doobie. This is just like trying to explain it to the MAGA how the Republicans are the actual bad guys, but won't let you explain the party switch. Okay, so now Doobie wants you to have more of the floor.
But Pisco won't allow him to connect the dots. This is just like trying to explain to MAGA how the Republicans are the actual bad guys. But won't let you. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. Pay nearly $1 million in tax if I'm sick for 4 weeks. $1 million? That seems kind of crazy. I'm not gonna lie. And worker protections are gone. They could fire me for after 13 years, no redundancy, income protection. I do think once you have a level of like built-in service, I do think there should be an obligation for the company to protect you in some way. Private hospitals are bailing anyway. Now that there's instability in the U.S., have you seen the statistics regarding hospitals? No, I've seen a lot of labor and foreign. I've seen a lot of things that are turning away from the U.S. in terms of faith in the U.S. Tourism, migration, our deals with other countries, our educated class like scientists and other laborers are going to other countries. Yeah, I still don't understand Connor's overall point.
Or you will now explain what Doobie is saying.
I've already had a ton of floor. No, wait,
I need. I want, because Doobie's saying Pisco's not letting Connor get to the key point where he will expose himself or something. So Doobie, why don't you explain what point I'm not letting Connor get to? So we're just gonna all wait.
Well,
No. We're all waiting for Doobie because I'm the one who's making the conversation impossible, and Connor's gonna finally expose himself. So Doobie, put into words exactly what it is I'm not letting him get to. You did say that. So, Doobie, how do you want the conversation to proceed? We're all waiting for you, Doobie. How would you like the conversation to proceed on your own terms?
Fat super chat, though.
Oh, is that not the real Doobie?
Chat, the way that you want the conversation to proceed.
Is that a Doobie with a different Doobie? No, it's you. That's you, isn't it? That's not the real Doobie? Is that not the real Doobie? Did I get one guide?
It happens.
Yeah.
That wasn't Doobie. Doobie didn't say that. All right. I took a Claritin.
Oh, fuck it.
Claritin. All right.
Okay.
You know what? I just I want to apologize to Doobie. Doobie, you can keep super chatting me. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, keep calling me a dumbass while sending me money for calling me a dumbass, right?
Was it a doppelganger? Anyways. I could have sworn it was Doobie. Was there a Scooby Doobie? Which Doobie was it? Sorry, Connor, you can continue. Different person?
Right.
Okay, my bad.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Let's focus on. Okay.
I'm not gonna lie.
So I've been descriptive so far, and I think that your lefties freaking out in chat, they're presuming that I'm making like a moral statement as to whether or not taking the Marxian analysis and applying it to social issues, whether or not that's good or bad. Weirdly enough, I think that there's some things in the progressive zeitgeist that are interesting. So, for instance,
I just don't. This is annoying me. Get to the point. And I hate to be that. Maybe this is their conversation, but if I was in the conversation, I would be like, I don't need a history lesson. If I did, I would go read about communism. I need us to get to the point on why this applies to Dems. Why is this fear applied, this danger applied to AOC over JD Vance? That's what I need to know. But especially if you agree that some of these things are good, which I think objectively they are, then I don't know what we're doing. That if they initialize that we got Medicare and public education, the workers agree to capitalism selling the assets out of the government that they paid for in exchange for being treated fair. You reneged on the agreement? Really? I don't know anything about. Is the Wagner Act in Australia thing?
Intersectionality. I know you're still looking at your chat, but I'm gonna keep talking anyways.
No, you can. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so for instance, like intersectionality, understanding that there are intersections between, like, let's say that we took all of our characteristics and we put them on an XY diagram, understanding that all of the people within a certain category are going to have shared experiences along this variable. And then understanding that all these people within this category are going to have experiences along this variable. And there's going to be intersections where, let's say, able-bodied straight white men have shared experiences around this thing, and more often than not, and let's say disabled black women all have shared experiences around this thing. We can analyze the way that culture impacts us, and then we can make accommodations to make a healthier, more understanding society. That's cool.
Like, I get, he's not rambling. Like, he's not saying nothing. It's just the point of what he's bringing up doesn't seem relevant to the overarching conversation. These are just descriptions of things that he has not proven connects to his overall conclusion.
I understand intersectionality. I think it's brilliant.
I feel like we're in the weeds again. Okay, so liberalism has some cool ideas. Maybe even some socialist people have some good ideas.
That's a
liberal people, lefty people have good ideas sometimes. I feel like we're getting lost. We're getting lost right here.
You're lost. I'm not lost at all.
Isn't the whole question like, why are you considering voting for JD Vance? And it's like, well, it's because
the question is, how through your ignorance are you I'll be rude because you're not paying attention and you're still lost. How are you?
Nobody's lost, Connor. The point is just not being made. It's not happening.
A useful cock sleeve for the far left. That was the question we were exploring for the past 30 or 40 minutes.
And like, when do I do things to sort of crypto sneak in the far left? When do I do that? I just don't understand.
By constantly working to not understand what I'm saying in reference to socialism, communism, the applications of Marcuse and Gramsci to modern social affairs, the way in which they've corrupted the modern American zeitgeist, and the ways in which these things are also normalizing terms like socialist or things like democratic socialist into the zeitgeist, that nefarious ideas can be.
This makes no sense to me. These loose connections to Democrats now becoming a little bit more progressive that could potentially lead to this ultimate nefarious socialism that can lead to communism. Oh my God. It's just, there's too much. There's too much. The percentage is like 5%. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. JD Vance is the vice president of a fascist. Like a legitimate fascist. This MAGA party are fascist parties. So how you, someone who's like loosely, like very derivatively connected to Hassan Piker and socialism, that person is as bad as someone who's literally a fascist. Makes no sense to me. This doesn't make sense. The chocolate Oreos are going to kill me, bro. They're too good. Private equity is withdrawing because of instabilities in the government. What are you referring to? Are you referring to what's going on currently in the United States, or just what went on during the Wagner Act back in history? I think you're probably talking about the U.S. at this point. I haven't researched the Wagner Act, so I don't know much about it.
Reintegrated back into the left. So your claims of like ignorance or lostness is actually not helping in your argumentation.
This feels like boomer shit.
No.
It feels like boomer shit because you're trying to avoid like the fucked up shit you said for the first part of this conversation. When I've been like, dude, this all seems like kind of
return like to it if you want.
Weirdo sicko shit that you're talking about, and I'm like, now we're talking about Marxist theory and intersectionality and the way that they're trying to use the term socialist and like, I don't know, whitewash the term socialist. It just feels like boomer shit. Like where is the concrete, like, this is a danger. They will do X, Y, Z. And that's why I'm considering voting for JD Vance if you have a super progressive on the ticket.
Because useful idiots like you, who, when I try to describe the history of the 20th century, you get bored. You get tired.
Nobody got. Oh my gosh!
You're not interested in hearing like the social evolution.
We don't need a history lesson for you to articulate your rationale. We don't. Because you haven't confirmed. And I could probably connect it. I probably can come into a very interpretive analysis on what his overarching point is, but I'm trying to allow him to make his own point, because oh man, there's so many things I can say here, but I just don't want to go on that rant. Make your own point, bro.
Of left-wing theory into modern social issues. You're not interested in the theory or the history of 20th century socialist regimes. You are a useful idiot, and I'm not going to reward your ignorance. So I can perfectly articulate.
Wait, I don't understand. How am I a useful idiot for these people? It's because I don't acknowledge your history is correct or something, or I don't acknowledge how the left has.
You haven't even paid attention to it. I've described like one half of what I wanted to tell you. You got bored 2 minutes into it. Then your chat freaked out, which you thought was interesting, and now you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Bitch, why don't you pay attention?
I'm trying to pay.
You've been talking about this for 40 minutes. What do you mean 2 minutes? What?
You're describing the way in which some of these trends in leftist thought have circulated and rear their head in modern discourse, including through things that are familiar to us, such as CRT.
Making it clear, Hassan Piker.
Okay, what about him?
Hassan Piker sits for the CCP. The CCP and China are state capitalism.
Hassan Piker sucks. Most people think Hassan Piker sucks. Most Democrats don't agree with Hassan Piker. All Democrats don't agree with Hassan Piker. Like, a lot of people don't agree with any of his ideas, and once they find out, like, oh, that's why Mom Dummy said, yeah, I condemn what he said about 9/11. Like, I don't know what we're doing here.
Capitalism is a step towards socialism. They still have authoritarian control over China. Hassan Piker and his useful cocksleeves, idiots, and Trojan horses are trying to repopularize the term socialism. They're trying to sanitize the reputation of nefarious authoritarian 20th century regimes. They're trying to vilify the American experiment of the 20th century. And they're trying to make it uniquely evil and therefore worthy of destruction. And through your ignorance, you mainstream their perspective.
Wait a second. First of all, I don't like that he did this kind of tour. I didn't watch all the streams, but I saw him be like, "Oh, the book." I'm not a fan of simping for the Chinese regime. I'm not at all. Talk to your friend Elon, by the way. I'm going to say it one more time for you, Connor. Talk to your friend Elon, who are sluts for China. You agree that a lot of these people are sluts for China?
Yeah, capitalists have.
So it seems like you're
sold out their morals. That's part of my criticism.
Yeah. So like,
but the comparison sucks. There's no way. Like, I'm with Pisco now. I'm getting pissed. The comparison that JD Vance, who's in line with all these elites, that is already part of a regime that is negatively affecting our institutions, and somehow you're still voting for this guy compared to someone who has a very, very, very fucking loose connection to Hassan Piker. It's ridiculous.
Because you're like trying to make a moral superior. Like, you think that Elon Musk is better?
Yeah, at least I get Boston Dynamics robots. You just usher in like shitty healthcare.
Well, it sounds like you're
but between I'm a healthy, able-bodied male who's capable.
I'll be honest. I think Connor is starting to sound like he doesn't give a fuck about the fascist regime. It sounds like to me he doesn't care about the fascist regime because he thinks it will die with Trump. He somehow thinks that JD Vance will be advocating for. He basically renege everything that Donald Trump does and become a completely different individual. It's like he has this whole historical lesson, but in modern history, JD Vance has already proven the type of person he is. But somehow you can envision him changing completely from the history, but he can't envision that for socialism. And somehow, after ignoring all of his fascist modern history connections and the dangers of what the elites can provide and eroding the institutions that they currently already have direct influence in, somehow all of that makes him a better candidate than an AOC. And AOC is not my choice. I would probably, I don't know, if I had to pick between AOC or Gavin, probably pick Gavin. But somehow he's better than AOC because of Medicare for all? I don't. This makes no fucking sense to me. And Medicare for all would never pass, and she would never erode the institutions and supersede what the Congress provides, I believe, anyway. Or Congress's role, not Congress provides. I don't get this. I need to have a conversation with Connor Points at some point and talk about this. This shit is
capable of making in the American economy. So yeah, you and your ilk and your useful stupidity usher in.
Yeah, but I condemn Hassan when he does the. Wait, I condemn his
socialized healthcare.
Wait. But
I usher in. Murder bots.
Wait, but the thing is, I condemn.
And murder bots are cool.
I condemn Hassan going to China. You should not have simped for China on that trip, Hassan. I condemn it. I have no problem doing that.
I'm sure he'll start listening. I'm sure he won't.
Oh, don't be a prick now, you piece of shit. You are such a piece of shit.
I'm sure he's listening. Number two, I'm sure he won't get a glowing review in the Times or CNN or some other fucking shit lib rag in the next 6 months.
I can't speak for them. Wait, I can't speak for fucking CNN, whatever. What I can speak
so
for
how
is myself.
Are you defending against
me? I want a social democracy. Workers have power, but it's regularly constrained. Wealth doesn't concentrate at the top, strong middle class. There needs to be wealth will always accumulate on the top, for sure. That will always be the case. We just need to moderate the distribution a little bit better. Not a little bit, a lot better. Someone says AZ is an effing retard. She did that whole tax the rich bullshit where she wore a $40,000. Just because I think this is going to be a hard concept for some people. Just because you say tax the rich doesn't mean that you think they should have no money. You can be rich, but also want me. If I'm a millionaire, I'm like, oh, I'm a millionaire. Tax me like crazy. I'll give you the money to help people. I'm still a millionaire, though. It's possible to do both, buddy. I know that's hard. It's possible to do both. Now, but when you're a millionaire and you want to cut your taxes, so you have to pay less taxes, and then the taxes that are being cut for everybody else is way less, then at that point, it's very clear who is he in favor for. I want you to tax me so you can help everybody else. I want you to cut my taxes so I don't have to give more money to the fucking plebs. Like, there's a difference. There's a difference.
Concept that liberals are useful fucking idiots for far lefties. Because all you're saying is, oh yeah, you're right. We are useful idiots for far lefties.
So I don't know, like CNN and the news, they cover a bunch of people making overtures to China, including Republicans, including I'm sure media people who go to different places. I'm sure they would cover, for example, Tucker Carlson going to Russia. They cover it. It's your contention that like they shouldn't cover it. I don't know what is your view on that? They shouldn't cover it, or they shouldn't give glowing reports of it?
My view is unapologetically simping for the Chinese regime is no different than simping for Nazi Germany in the early 20th century.
Okay, I don't think that
it's morally identical.
I don't take that view, but I condemn it nonetheless. I think that you should not simp for the Chinese Communist
Party. So let's break that down. So hold on. You're aware of the fact that the Uyghur Western Chinese ethno-religious group that's predominantly Muslim engaged in some jihadist terrorism in the early 2000s, and as a result, the Chinese government mass incarcerated all adult.
Why are we breaking this down now? You didn't make a good claim about. He asked you, okay, the news stations, yeah, they might glaze Hassan. One, probably due to ignorance of Hassan Piker, not the harms of communism. Not everybody watches his streams all the time. And they've done the same thing for other people too. Especially in Trump's first administration, they were very nice to him until they realized how much of a piece of shit he is. So what are we doing? What's the point? I'm good, bro. Yeah, I'm good.